Blissful Bookshelf. Chapter 715. Shin Xian frowned and thought for a while before saying, before the imperial edict comes, quickly marry Jiao Jiao off. However, in such a short period of time, even an engagement would be very difficult. He also didn't know what kind of person the other party was. No matter what, tonight I will get people to look for some young talents, and if there are some with good character, as long as Jiao Jiao is not disgusted, then settle it first. Shin Xian said, in short, one cannot let Jiao Jiao marry into the imperial family. Shin Miao did not know what kind of feeling she had in her heart. The voices in the room gradually became smaller and should be discussing which young talents were reliable. Shin Miao straightened up and was about to turn around to return to her own room when she turned around to see Shin Qiu and Luo Ling standing behind her. Both of them were frowning, and one did not know when they stood there and how much they heard. Shin Qiu pulled Shin Miao and walked out. Until they walked to Shin Miao's courtyard, Shin Qiu and Luo Ling entered the room and let the maids out before closing the door. Younger sister, the Empress wants to bestow marriage to the crown prince? It seemed that he had heard it. Shin Miao did not intend to hide it and nodded her head. Shin Qiu slammed his fist on the table and gritted his teeth, "You're going too far." Shin Miao laughed in spite of herself and said, "How many people want to climb up the high branches of the Eastern Palace, but when it comes to you, it becomes bullying. Eldest brother's eyesight is too high. In this way, the entire Ding capital's people are not able to enter your eyes." Shin Qiu unhappily said, "Jiao Jiao, why are you so big-hearted? I am worried for you, but you are actually laughing at me." Luo Ling looked at Shin Miao and asked warmly, "What does Biao younger sister think of this matter?" Shin Miao shrugged her shoulders, "One has to do one's best and know one's destiny. Biao younger sister does not object." Luo Ling's tone was somewhat inexplicable. "Father and mother have already found a way out for me," Shin Miao said indifferently, as if the discussion was not about her marriage. She said, "Find some young talents that I find suitable, and quickly get engaged before the imperial edict reaches the Shin mansion." "That will do." She smiled and said, "Don't worry. My taste isn't as high as big brother's. It shouldn't be difficult to find a suitable one." Shin Qiu mumbled, "Don't know which family's brat got the advantage." Shin Miao pretended not to hear it. Luo Ling walked a step closer and asked, "If one is not found suitable, or before that, the imperial edict comes down, what about Biao younger sister?" Shin Qiu said, "Biao younger brother, how can you say such unlucky words?" Luo Ling however was still staring at Shin Miao, as if he was persistent in seeking an answer from Shin Miao. Shin Miao smiled and said, "Then marry Mimi." Shin Qiu shouted, "Otherwise what?" Shin Miao said, "Could it be that the entire Shin family have to bear the crime of defying the edict and be annihilated? Because of me, all my loved ones are implicated? Just because I was stubborn and refused to marry, my family suffered because of me. Big brother, is this what you want to see? Brother, let me ask you, if you were me, or if the Empress wanted to marry you, what would you do? You would also say that you would rather die than marry?" Shin Qiu fell silent. If it was him, he would accept this marriage for Shin Miao and his parents. If sacrificing himself could bring peace to the entire mansion, Shin Qiu felt that there was nothing he couldn't do. "Big brother will be like me, right?" Shin Miao said lightly, "Not everyone in the world can do their own things as they wish. Everyone have their own choice. One will do one's best to know one's destiny, and I will try my best to avoid this result. If it cannot be avoided, then it is not a big deal. Blissful Bookshelf. If one marries, then so be it." Shin Miao looked at Shin Qiu, "A husband, a marriage, in my heart it is not as important as one's loved ones. But that is the happiness of your life." Shin Qiu's eyes were somewhat sour. He did not know why his younger sister's expression was so cold when she talked about marriage and husbands, and even had some disgust. But he instinctively felt that Shin Miao, at the age of a young female, did not have the expectations and dreams that a young female should have, and that was because he did not take good care of his younger sister. Happiness is to be fought for by oneself and not depend on someone to obtain it. Shen Miao said, could it be that marrying a good person can guarantee my lifetime of happiness? No matter if it is the crown prince or other people, is there anyone who can be sure that in the next few decades, he would not take in concubines and be fickle? I do not believe. Younger sister, you cannot think like this. You are not married yet and cannot think of others so scary and cannot see vicissitudes of life. Just like a married woman who had seen thousands of ships. Luo Ling however looked at Shen Miao thoughtfully and moved his lips but in the end did not say anything. Shen Miao's eyes drooped. Husband? Marriage? In her previous life, she had suffered a terrible setback because of this. To her, this was a word that carried the weight of pain. Do not fall at the same place twice. Without expectations, there would not be any harm. Her smile was cold. It is not that I am thinking too badly but Big Brother is thinking too complicatedly. It is only marrying. Females all have to marry and if one marries well, one would have a peaceful life. Even if one does not live well in the residence of the Crown Prince, I will not let the person who hurt me live well. Chapter 716. The news that the Empress suddenly revealed made the Shen family fall into an anxious situation. There was no doubt that Shen Xian and wife were not willing for Shen Miao to marry into the imperial family. The most ruthless imperial family, other than many political considerations, it was also because of the complexity of the imperial family's inner courtyard. If Shen Miao were to marry in, there would be intrigue and it would not be easy. Compared to this, glory, splendor, wealth, and supreme honor were not worth it. Shen Xian had the intention to marry Shen Miao out before the imperial edict. Originally before entering the palace, because of Su Furen's matter, Shen Xian and Luo Shuayan had discussed to start paying attention to Shen Miao's lifelong matter. Luo Shuayan even ordered the servants to specially make a booklet and on it were all the young talents in the Ding capital. The booklet recorded in detail these people's character, where they lived, how many people were in the house and how many places were in their hometown. Luo Shuayan also beat around the bush to inquire about Shen Miao's intentions and when she heard that Shen Miao did not mind this way of looking at her husband, she was relieved and really intended to help Shen Miao look for a match. The Shen family held great power in the Ding capital and was a very special existence in Emperor Wen Hui's eyes, thus it was not easy to casually pick the family. Shen Xian did not even consider those officials who already had monstrous power because it was to prevent Emperor Wen Hui from thinking that they were deliberately forming an alliance. Thus Luo Shuayan and Shen Xian picked those families that were above average, did not have any ambition and were upright aristocratic families. Shen Qiu was a forthright person and had a group of good brothers in the Ministry of War that could help him to inquire about these people's character in private. Shen Xian and Luo Shuayan had such plans for Shen Miao but it was out of their expectations that whenever Shen Xian revealed a little bit of intention to marry, the other party would smile and decline. It was either that their son was already engaged or that they were not in a hurry to marry a wife. Shen Xian had a violent temper and also loved Shen Miao in his palms. Others did not fancy Shen Miao but Shen Xian also did not fancy others, thus he would brush his sleeves and leave. But in the end, it was always this kind of situation. Those talented youths that they had taken a liking to with great difficulty would all find excuses to decline. One or two of them would be a coincidence, but if there were too many, it would make people feel that something was wrong. Shen Xian also sensed that something was not right and it was a military general who was on good terms with Shen Xian who told him that the current court officials knew that the imperial family had the intention to introduce Shen Miao to the current His Highness the Son of Heaven. Shen Xian was looking for in-laws for Shen Miao but who would dare to fight for a woman for the imperial family? By marrying over, Shen Miao would escape the fate of marrying into the Eastern Palace but it would also make the imperial family unhappy with Shen Miao's in-laws. It was all for self-protection. Even if the Shen family had a big business and Shen Miao was intelligent and steady, no one would dare to marry her. When Shin Xian heard of the news in the residence, he immediately flew into a rage and said that he originally saw that those noble families did not associate with the secular world, but did not expect that they were all cowards. It was fortunate that Shin Miao was not married to them, otherwise how would they be able to support Shin Miao in the future? When Shin Miao heard the information that Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang inquired, she only smiled faintly. Jing Zhe anxiously said, "Why is young lady not anxious?" Now Furen and Master are extremely anxious, and if this goes on, even if the imperial edict was not sent down, they would not be able to find a suitable person. The Fu family are not fools. Shin Miao picked up the hot tea on the table and took a sip. How would one not know what father and mother are planning? Shin Miao knew from the beginning that Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan's method would not work. As for how the news of her marrying the crown prince was spread out, needless to say, it was naturally the imperial family's doing. The imperial family practically announced to the world that Shin Miao was the person that they fancied. How would the officials of Ming Qi dare to openly go against the imperial family to snatch a person? Thus Shin Xian and wife's plan to let Shin Miao marry out as soon as possible was destined to fail. Chapter 717. Gu Yu's throat was somewhat sour as she said, "Could it be that young lady really want to marry His Highness the Crown Prince?" As personal maids, even though Jing Zhe and Gu Yu could not understand what Shin Miao was thinking, they could more or less feel some of Shin Miao's feelings. For example, Shin Miao did not like the imperial palace at all and did not like the people in the imperial palace. Now if Shin Miao were to marry into the Eastern Palace, she would definitely not be comfortable. Shin Miao said, "Let's go and see." But in her heart she was thinking that she would never want to marry again in the imperial family of Ming Qi. It was just an imperial edict that could control him and control the land. If it was really not possible, she would ruin her own reputation. The Fu family kept saying that they wanted the Shin family's military power, but they dared not show their true colors to the outside world. When Shin Miao's reputation was ruined, if the crown prince still insisted on marrying her, it would be too unsightly. Which was more important, a green hat or military power? From Shin Miao's understanding of the Fu family, it was definitely the military power that was more important. But if he really did not hesitate to wear a green hat to marry her, the commoners would not feel that the Fu family had deep sentiments but would feel that the imperial inner palace was in a mess. Even if the Fu family did not have the hearts of the people, they would not dare to let the rumors spread. It was just that. Shin Miao stared at the floating tea leaves in the teacup and her reputation would similarly be ruined. Fortunately she did not have any sisters and would not implicate her sisters to be ridiculed like her. Unfortunately, Shin Xian and the rest would definitely suffer the finger-pointing of others. But this was the last resort and also the only way. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not know that Shin Miao already had her own ideas and were still thinking about finding a good husband for Shin Miao. But the imperial family's message had already spread out and even the Iceman did not dare to accept the Shin family's business, thus the Shin family was recently deserted. Shin Qiu almost went to kidnap a good friend to marry Shin Miao. After being stopped by Luo Shuiyan, Shin Qiu, Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xian sat in the room and when they talked about Shin Miao's marriage, their faces were filled with worry. Luo Shuiyan said, "This move of the imperial family is really too despicable. Previously there were so many people who wanted to claim marriage with us, but now they all took a detour. What is this? It's all my fault." Shin Xian said, "One should have arranged a marriage for Jiao Jiao in the beginning. One thought that she was young and it would not be a problem to wait for a few more years, but one did not expect to fall into the trap." Shin Qiu scratched his head, "No matter what, younger sister cannot marry into the crown prince residence. A girl raised by our generals Fu, why should she be someone's side fei? We even have to pick and choose to be the main wife, how could she be someone's side fei? Now that no one dares to marry into our family, what should we do?" Luo Shuiyan's expression was somewhat anxious as she probed, "Why not go outside the Ding capital to look for a suitable family?" Shin Qiu was surprised, "Mother, you want to marry younger sister far away?" Luo Shuiyan said in a bad mood, I also have no other choice. One fear that all the officials in the Ding capital know about this matter, and perhaps it has spread outside of the Ding capital. One have to find some remote places that do not know about this matter. No. Shen Xian flatly refused. If one were to marry far away, it would only inconvenience Jiao Jiao. Moreover, the mountain is high and the road is far. If the in-laws bully her, what can be done if we are far away in the Ding capital and are unable to help? Luo Shuiyan was annoyed. This cannot be done, that cannot be done. What do you say? Shen Qiu sighed. In the end, these people in the Ding capital are afraid of implicating themselves. Could it be that there is no male who values younger sister more than his own life? Seeing Luo Shuiyan staring at him, Shen Qiu quickly added, other than me and father. Just as he was speaking, one saw Luo Ling walking in from outside. Luo Shuiyan called him to sit down and asked eagerly, Linger, have you found a suitable family today? Chapter 718. Luo Ling shook his head. Shen Xian and Shen Qiu were somewhat disappointed. Luo Shuiyan also lowered her head and looked worriedly at the teacup in front of her. In the silence, one heard Luo Ling softly saying, Gugu, Gufu, Biao older brother. The three of them looked up and saw that Luo Ling's expression was somewhat strange, like he wanted to say something but stopped. Shen Qiu asked, younger Biao brother, what happened to you? If you have anything to say, just say it. We're all family here. Luo Ling took a deep breath and said, until now younger Biao's sister still have not found a suitable person. Luo Shuiyan shook her head and said, these people in the Ding capital are all afraid of the imperial family finding trouble with them, and can't wait to stay far away from the Shen family. It is really too difficult to find a suitable person who is willing to marry Jiao Jiao at this juncture. Then, Luo Ling paused for a moment before plucking up his courage to speak, I am willing to marry younger Biao's sister. As soon as these words were spoken, the room immediately became silent. Even the servant girls at the side didn't dare to speak and quietly retreated to the side. Shen Qiu and Shen Xian stared closely at Luo Ling, but Luo Ling seemed to have suddenly gained courage and continued to speak, I know that my right hand is not good now, and in terms of family background and looks, there are many people who are better than me in the Ding capital, but I am willing to marry younger Biao's sister. I will always treat her well and not take in any concubines or tongfang, and only her alone in the inner courtyard. Moreover, Luo Ling smiled gently, if Gugu and Gugu Fu are worried that there will be any movements from the imperial family, I can bring her back to the Shaochun city. Father, mother and great-grandfather are all there and they will take care of younger Biao's sister and not let younger Biao's sister suffer grievances. Gugu and Gu Fu will be able to return to the Shaochun city to visit Biao's younger sister during the next expedition. Biao's younger brother, you. Shen Qiu was speechless. Not only Shen Qiu, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian were also stunned. Luo Ling's words were said in a plain and simple manner and there were no fancy promises, but it was in sincerity. Before that, it was not that Luo Shuiyan did not think about these two children, but seeing that Shen Miao seemed to only have a sibling relationship with Luo Ling, she did not think more about it. But now the circumstances were different. Compared to the crown prince, Luo Ling was the best ending. It could be said that Shen Xian and wife watched Luo Ling grow up. His character was upright and gentle and was good at accommodating others, so he could accommodate Shen Miao. He was also her eldest brother's son, which was equivalent to a family. If Shen Miao were to marry over, she would not have to suffer any difficulties from her father-in-law and mother-in-law. With Luo Lianying's and Madame Yu's love for Shen Miao, one could say that they would be biased towards Shen Miao. The most important thing was that Luo Ling could bring Shen Miao back to the Shaochun city. The heavens were high and the emperor was far away, so no matter how dissatisfied the imperial family was, they would not be able to do anything, so it was just right for Shen Miao to avoid the limelight. As the fight for the throne between the princes became more intense, the situation in Ming Qi became more complicated and the Ding capital became more dangerous. Shin Xian himself could not leave the Ding capital due to his military power, but he did not wish to involve his pair of children into the dangerous whirlpool. Shin Qiu was a male and had entered officialdom, so he could no longer escape, but for Shin Miao, Shin Xian always hoped that she would be able to lead a peaceful and smooth life. Marrying into the Luo family was indeed a good choice. Shin Xian stared at Luo Ling and his words were somewhat sharp. Linger, now you marry Jiao Jiao in order to solve the difficulties, but one cannot guarantee that in the future you will meet a young lady that you fancy. What will you do at that time? There was some probing meaning in these words, but Luo Ling suddenly blushed. His face was slightly red, but he still insisted, one would not meet a young lady that I fancy. The one that I fancy is only younger Biao's sister. When Shin Qiu heard it, he was suddenly overjoyed and patted Luo Ling's shoulder. So to say, you have long fancied younger sister? Luo Shuiyan was also somewhat surprised. Luo Ling's character was gentle and self-restrained and did not reveal his emotions. Even though he treated Shin Miao well on normal days, Luo Shuiyan thought that it was just an elder brother taking care of his younger sister. She did not think that Luo Ling would have such intentions. Chapter 719. Luo Ling nodded his head. You're really lucky, you stinking brat. Shin Qiu was suddenly slightly dissatisfied and spoke resentfully. Shut up, Qiu'er. Luo Shuiyan glared at Shin Qiu and looked at Luo Ling. The more she looked, the more satisfied she was. Shin Xian and Shin Qiu however did not have a good feeling as their emotions were extremely complicated. Both father and son were not happy that no one married Shin Miao, but they were also unhappy that someone married. Especially Shin Xian, he felt that he had brought up his beautiful daughter to marry this brat in front of him. He felt that Luo Ling's nose was not his nose and his eyes were not his eyes. Shin Qiu said, I did not say anything wrong. If this matter did not happen to our Jiao Jiao, one could casually pick any of the Ding capital's disciples and it would not be too much to pick a heavenly immortal. Who knew that something like this would happen? Cousin got lucky, I don't know what good karma he accumulated in his previous life. Luo Shuiyan was furious, brat, try talking nonsense again. No ivory comes out of a filthy mouth. Luo Ling smiled, older Biao brother is right, it is my fortune to be able to marry Jiao Jiao, but... He said, one still have to ask younger Biao's sister's opinion on this matter. If Biao Mei is unwilling, then there is no need to mention this matter again. In the end, he still had to respect Shin Miao's wishes. Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xian looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. To marry or not to marry, at the end it all depended on Shin Miao's attitude. But with the current situation, one think that Shin Miao would not hesitate to choose to marry Luo Ling. After all, it did not seem to suit Shin Miao's preference to be a souffle in the Eastern Palace. Moreover, compared to the Crown Prince, Luo Ling's appearance was handsome and his temperament was gentle and tolerant, obviously more in line with the appearance of a husband. Luo Shuiyan said, don't belittle yourself. No matter what, your uncle, your cousin, and I will always be on your side. Shin Xian and Shin Qiu were very dissatisfied with being represented by Luo Shuiyan, but they did not refute. While they were discussing this matter, a manservant suddenly came to report, Master and Madam, someone is looking for you at the door. These few days, because of Shin Miao's matter, those people in the Ding capital who had some friendship with the Shin family avoided them and would not take the initiative to visit, thus one did not expect that there would be people who came to look for them at this time. Shin Qiu asked casually, who? The manservant said, it's Madam Countess of Pingnan. Everyone, when Su Furen entered the room, she did not expect Shin Qiu and Shin Xian to be there. Speaking of which, she was still a little afraid of Shin Xian. Because in the early years, Shin Xian and Su Yu did not have a good political opinion, Shin Xian did not treat Su Yu well. Naturally, Su Yu did not think much of Shin Xian, let alone Madame Su. This time, if it was not because of Su Mingfeng, Su Furen would not be able to enter the Shin family's doors in this lifetime. Luo Shuiyan invited Su Furen to sit down and Su Furen greeted Shin Xian. Looking at Shin Qiu with a smile, he said, this must be the eldest young master of the residence. He is indeed a young and talented man with extraordinary looks. One look and one can tell that he is not an ordinary man. Shen Qiu repeatedly said that he did not dare. Su Furen then looked at Luo Ling and asked with a smile, this one, Luo Shuiyan explained, this is my maiden family's eldest brother's son, Luo Ling. Su Furen's gaze towards Luo Ling was somewhat strange and asked without batting an eyelid, then does this Biao young master currently have a marriage partner? Replying to Furen's words, not yet. Luo Ling replied politely. Following that he looked at Su Furen with some puzzlement. Most likely he did not understand why this matron, whom he had just met for the first time, would ask him about a marriage partner as it was somewhat abrupt. The more polite Luo Ling was, the more strange Su Furen's gaze towards him was. Upon closer inspection, there was even some hostility. Naturally others could not make heads or tails of it, but who knew that Su Furen was complaining incessantly in her heart. One did not think that there was such a young Biao young master in the Shen family. Looking at this Biao young master's appearance, he was sensible and well-mannered, so it was not bad. One had to know that it was easy for something to happen between Biao brothers and Biao sisters. Shen Miao was still young and not sensible, so she might be cheated by this Biao older brother. As such, would Su Mingfeng still have a chance? Su Furen suddenly roused herself and was determined to fight for her son. Chapter 720. Because Shen Xian and the rest were males, it was not good for them to sit and listen to females, so they got up and left. Only Luo Shuiyan and Su Furen were left in the main hall. Luo Shuiyan asked with a smile, Su Furen's visit today, is there any important matter? She did not even send an invitation and was somewhat anxious. Luo Shuiyan had a faint guess in her heart but did not dare to think too deeply and only thought that she was imagining things. Su Furen said seriously, the matter that I mentioned to Furen a few days ago, what is Furen's current consideration? Luo Shuiyan was startled. The matter that was mentioned a few days ago? What was the matter that was mentioned a few days ago? Was it the marriage between Su Mingfeng and Shen Miao? Luo Shuiyan could not help but be somewhat frightened as she said, could it be that Su Furen did not hear the recent rumors in the marketplace? Even though she also hoped that there would be people coming to marry Shen Miao and the more the better so that Shen Miao would have more choices, but she did not wish to hide it from the other and let the other be unlucky, thus her words were frank. Su Furen said, what rumors? Luo Shuiyan's heart hardened and simply said, it is the rumors that the crown prince has the heart to marry our daughter into the residence. So it is this matter. Su Furen smiled, I heard about it. The young lady of the Shen family has outstanding character and looks that even the imperial family keeps thinking about her. When Su Furen said this, there was no trace of shyness in her expression and was even more magnanimous than Luo Shuiyan. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat unable to understand. Was Su Furen's heart a little too big? Did she not understand the meaning of the imperial family's preference for Shen Miao, or did she not care at all? After hearing about this matter, are you still considering the marriage between the young master of the Su family and my daughter? Luo Shuiyan asked. Naturally one has to consider. Su Furen nodded her head, one cannot be so overbearing. One cannot only let the Su family fancy young lady Shen and not allow other families to fancy young lady Shen, right? Furen, our Su family's temperament is honest and sincere and not so overbearing. Luo Shuiyan felt that Su Furen's thoughts were not on the same point as her, so she made it clear to her in detail. She said, the crown prince has the intention to take my daughter into the Eastern Palace. Because we are both mothers, I won't hide it from Furen. My daughter doesn't want to be a side fae, so she wants to get married early. However, since this rumor had already spread out, those who had been looking for her previously tried their best to reject it. Madam also understands that whoever dares to marry my daughter at this time would be going against the imperial family and angering the imperial family. I'm afraid they will suffer in the future. Madam Su, do you understand what I mean now? Do you still want to get married? His words were sincere and he didn't hide anything. He directly exposed the disadvantages to the other party. Madame Su, on the other hand, slowly smiled and said, "Madam, do you think I am an idiot and can't even understand such a small matter?" Luo Shuiyan was even more confused now. Why did he still want to get married after knowing the disadvantages? Is the Su family not afraid of getting into trouble? I won't hide it from Madam. Su Furen said with a smile, the current situation in the Ding capital is too complicated. My master often say the words avoid calamity, most likely he is thinking of not coming out to avoid these worldly matters. In the past 2 years, the Count of Pingnan's family had already withdrawn from the affairs of the imperial court. Speaking of which, since they had pretty much cut themselves off from the official family, they did not have to worry so much about doing things. The reason why I wanted this marriage was naturally because I know of the dangers involved. But who let Ming Feng like it? Luo Shuiyan's eyes widened and cried out involuntarily, like? She had always thought that the words that Su Furen said that day were just polite words or something that was made up to brush her off. Now looking at Su Furen's expression, it did not seem to be fake. Of course. Su Furen said, if it is not because Ming Feng likes it. Why would I keep pestering Madam? She sighed, I have never seen Ming Feng like any young lady before, but know that this son of mine is a stubborn one. Once he likes something, it would be too late to change it. Since he likes Shen young lady, it would be very difficult to like other young lady in the future. One fear that he would walk into a dead end, it would be better to fulfill his wish. Su Furen looked down at her fingertips. Because of the Su family's relationship, Ming Feng can only hide and not be able to display his skills in his career. It is already us who have let him down. If one were to not let him have his wish in the marriage, master and I would feel that we owe him and would not be able to make it up in this lifetime. Chapter 721. As Luo Shuiyan listened, she gradually felt a sense of melancholy in her heart. They were both mothers, so naturally, they could understand each other. She heard Su Furen continue, but don't worry madam. Although our Su family is no longer an official's family, we still have enough money. We also have many shops, so we won't have to worry about food and drink. After young lady Shen marries over, master and I will treat her as our own daughter. Ming Feng's character is old-fashioned and honest, thus there would not be any other female in the inner courtyard. The population is simple and even though Miss Shen cannot enjoy the splendor and wealth like in the Crown Prince's residence, she can still live a satisfied and free life. Luo Shuiyan's heart was moved. Madame Su's words could be considered to have hit the bottom of her heart. She did not wish for the person that Shen Miao would marry to be rich and noble, but as long as the other party was upright, had good character, treated Shen Miao well and had a simple mouth, it would be better. Su Ming Feng was really a good candidate. Thinking about Luo Ling just now, Su Furen started to hesitate. Luo Ling was also not bad but Shen Miao had to return to the Shaochun city and with Su Ming Feng, Shen Miao could stay in the Ding capital. This time, due to various considerations in her heart, Luo Shuiyan did not reject Su Furen immediately and only said to think about it. After Su Furen left, Luo Shuiyan went to look for Shen Xian to discuss the matter. Of course the most important thing was to see Shen Miao's intentions. Both of them were young talents and as long as it was clear that there was no problem with Su Ming Feng, then Shen Miao would be able to take a look at her future husband. One did not know how this matter was passed to Shen Miao's ears and when Luo Tan came to look for Shen Miao, she was overjoyed and said, Biao youngest sister usually do not leave the house but one did not think that fragrant wine does not fear deep alleys. You see, older brother Ling and young master Su came over and there is also that crown prince. This is a total of 3 peach blossoms. In the eyes of others, I'm afraid they would die of envy. Shen Miao felt very helpless. Luo Ling actually proposed to marry her at this time. Of course what Shen Miao did not expect was that Su Furen would actually come over and help Su Ming Feng to grasp this marriage. The matter of Su Furen wanting to marry into the Shen family had already made Shen Miao suspicious. One feared that Su Ming Feng wanted to investigate Xie Jingxing's identity. Now at this stage, the Su family did not hesitate to become enemies with the imperial family to marry her. Shen Miao felt that Su Mingfeng was a dangerous person. She thought that it was best to hand Su Mingfeng's matter over to Xie Jingxing to resolve, but Shen Miao glanced at the window. She did not know when this person would return. It was in troubled times and yet he chose to disappear at this time. Without any reason, Shen Miao was somewhat dissatisfied in her heart. Luo Tan continued, previously when we were hanging the red rope on the tree of cultivating destinies in Pu Tua Temple, the red rope that Biao youngest sister threw was at a good place. At that time I took a look, there were a lot of side branches extending towards the red rope. I am afraid they are the peach blossoms of today. I think these 3 peach blossoms are not enough, maybe there are 6, 7 or 8 more. Shen Miao said as she picked up the teacup, do you think that one is cutting window flowers and one can have as many as one want? Luo Ling had a kind character and the Su family was a wonderful family. It was already rare to find 2 people who were not afraid of becoming enemies with the imperial family, so how could there be others? But thinking of what that crazy Taoist said before, one feared that there would be difficulties with peach blossoms. One's heart could not help but jump. Could it be that the Taoist was right? Luo Tan continued to talk to herself, but Biao youngest sister's red rope finally landed on a high branch and that high branch should be your final destination. One do not know who is my brother-in-law. Shen Miao took a sip of tea and absent-mindedly listened to Luo Tan's serious nonsense. It would be good if it was Prince Rui. Luo Tan clapped her hands, then I will rise with the tide and be Prince Rui's sister-in-law. Shen Miao was drinking tea and sprayed out a mouthful of tea and almost choked herself. But one did not expect that Luo Tan's words would come true. Shen Miao's peach blossoms did not come, but when they came it was astonishing. Merely 3 was indeed underestimated. Chapter 722. On the morning of the 2nd day, a special guest came to the Shen mansion. The person who came was not someone else but Feng and Ning. Ever since the matter of Shen Miao and Luo Tan being kidnapped, Feng and Ning really took the initiative to visit and apologize. Shen Xian and wife were forthright people and moreover the matter at that time could not be blamed on Feng and Ning and could only be blamed on those robbers. Even though Shen Xian and wife expressed that it was not a big deal and Shen Miao and Luo Tan did not take it to heart, Feng and Ning seemed to be very guilty. Other than sending people to deliver some small things every 3 to 5 days, she did not visit again. Most likely it was because she felt that she did not have the face to face Shen Miao and Luo Tan. Luo Tan sent an invitation to Feng and Ning which Feng and Ning tactfully rejected. One did not expect that she would take the initiative to visit today. When Luo Tan heard that Feng and Ning came, she was very happy and pulled Shen Miao to the front hall. In the Ding capital, other than Shen Miao, Feng and Ning was Luo Tan's only friend. Out of the 2 of them, one was bold and straightforward while the other was forthright and uninhibited. They were like-minded. Because of the previous matter, Luo Tan had not seen Feng and Ning for a long time and was somewhat impatient. When they reached the main hall, one really saw Luo Shuayan talking to Feng and Ning. Feng and Ning was wearing a moon-white short coat and skirt, her hair was combed into a bun and she wore pearl earrings and colored glass hairpin, looking much more quiet than usual. Luo Tan was the first to call out, Feng and Ning, and ran over. But Shen Miao noticed that in the position beside Feng and Ning, there was a young man in his early 20s. This young man had delicate features and was wearing a green robe that fitted his body. He had a gentle demeanor and was very courteous. Seeing that Shen Miao was looking at him, he nodded his head to Shen Miao with a very thorough etiquette. There were some similarities between his brows and Feng and Ning's. Luo Tan then noticed that there was another person and said, "This is." Luo Shuayan was somewhat embarrassed as it was not in accordance with the rules to let 2 young ladies meet an outsider without rhyme or reason. But thinking of the reason why Feng and Ning came today, she felt somewhat awkward and one could not tell if she was happy or worried. It was Feng and Ning who took the initiative to say, "This is my older brother." Shen Miao suddenly understood. Only Feng and Ning and her eldest brother Feng Zixian were Feng Di's children. This must be her big brother, Feng Zixian. Feng Zixian stood up and cupped his hands towards Shen Miao and Luo Tan. Shen Miao and Luo Tan quickly returned the greeting. Luo Tan looked at Feng Zixian with some doubts before looking at Feng and Ning and asked, "And Ning, did you not come here today to play with us?" If Feng and Ning was here to look for Shen Miao and Luo Tan, she would not have brought Feng Zixian over. However, this was also very surprising. He did not understand what Feng and Ning meant. Feng and Ning did not speak and only looked at Feng Zixian. Feng Zixian's expression was slightly embarrassed, but he still took the initiative to speak. "Today one came over because one heard that the Ministry of War's Shinqiu brother mentioned that your residence is looking for a son-in-law. This one is bold enough to recommend myself. Would young lady and Furen be magnanimous enough to forgive the rudeness?" Finishing, his face was slightly red as he avoided Luo Tan's probing gaze. Luo Shuiyan was a little embarrassed, but her eyes were filled with joy. Luo Tan's mouth was wide open, as she did not expect that the other party would come with such intentions. Shen Miao was surprised for a moment and was unable to describe the feeling in her heart. The words that this Feng Zixian said could be said to be very bold. But for those who came up to talk about matchmaking, they would either invite an iceman to lobby or their own parents would come over to take a look. There were very few who came over personally. But even though he came over personally, he invited an elder to the side and did not lose his etiquette. If this was spread out, no one would say anything about Shen Miao's innocence. He was a person who understood the rules very well. Chapter 723. Shen Miao did not speak, but Feng and Ning took the initiative to speak. She glanced at Shen Miao. The usually arrogant Feng and Ning had now put away the arrogance in her bones. Most likely she was still feeling guilty about the previous matter as her tone had some probing to please. She said, "We have heard of the rumors. Now the officials in the Ding capital have some fear, but marrying into the Eastern Palace is not the best choice for you. It is better to marry my eldest brother. My eldest brother's literary and military strategies are not bad and his temperament is upright and outspoken. If you are to marry into our residence, I will help you and take care of everything." Feng and Ning had always had the temperament of not beating around the bush. These words were said honestly, but it was really for Shen Miao's sake. Luo Shuiyan's expression softened a lot. Shen Miao asked, "Do Feng Furen and Master Feng know about this matter?" Feng and Ning hesitated for a moment before saying, "Initially father did not agree, but after our persuasion, he followed our temperament. My father has a sharp mouth but a soft heart. It is only that his mouth is stubborn, but he is very loyal. He will definitely not obstruct this matter." Shen Miao did not doubt this point. She only saw Feng and Ning's one-track mind and did not know how to play tricks, so she knew that Master Feng looked smart but was actually not so. She then looked at Feng Zixian and asked, "Does Gentleman Feng also feel that I am pitiful and want to lend a helping hand, that's why he married me?" When the words were said, everyone was surprised. Luo Shuiyan was surprised that when Shen Miao was facing a lifelong matter, there was no shyness or any other emotions at all. It was somewhat strange for her to treat it so calmly. Feng Zixian did not think that Shen Miao would ask this question so straightforwardly. He quickly recovered to his senses and said, "My younger sister had mentioned about young lady many times before. Zixian admires young lady's talent and temperament. This time it is only a coincidence and dare not say that one would lend a helping hand." Finishing, his face turned redder. Luo Tan laughed when she heard it, but Shen Miao was somewhat powerless. She did not know how Feng and Ning usually described herself to Feng Zixian, that she even said, talent and temperament. Feng and Ning looked nervously at Shen Miao and asked, "My eldest brother is definitely better than the crown prince." Shen Miao almost laughed. If these words were heard by others, one would say that Feng and Ning was being disrespectful. But for Feng and Ning to say such words, it meant that she really placed her in her heart. Shen Miao then looked at Feng Zixian, who looked similar to Feng and Ning. His brows were magnanimous and should be an upright person. Shen Miao smiled, one cannot decide my marriage in just a few short sentences. This is too unfair to me, and unfair to young Master Feng. When Luo Shuiyan heard Shen Miao's words, she had some thoughts in her heart. Shen Miao's meaning was obviously that she had other thoughts about her marriage. But as a mother, she did not know what Shen Miao's intentions were. Shen Miao was not willing to marry into the Eastern Palace and did not seem to be interested in these young talents that Luo Shuiyan was somewhat anxious. One thought that no one would dare to go against the imperial family and come to the Shen mansion to propose, but one did not expect that there would be 3 of them. Luo Ling, Su Ming Feng and Feng Zixian. Any one of them would be satisfactory. But Shen Miao did not see anything special about anyone. Feng and Ning said, "But if you are not anxious, then there is no time." These words were not false. Who knew when the imperial edict would come down? If it was in the past, naturally there would be a lot of time for Shen Miao to think clearly, but now that the imperial edict came down, there was no room for maneuver. Shen Miao waved her hands and was about to speak when she suddenly saw Jing Zhu rushing in from outside and said anxiously, "Young lady, people from the palace have arrived." Chapter 724. Luo Shuiyan's face instantly turned snow-white. Not daring to let others discover that the Feng siblings were here, Luo Shuiyan brought Shen Miao to the front hall to greet them. When the young eunuch finished speaking, one then knew that it was not an imperial edict but for Shen Miao to enter the palace alone tomorrow, as the Empress had something to say to Shen Miao. After the eunuch left, Luo Shuiyan's expression became extremely ugly. Although there was no imperial edict, it was not much better. Tomorrow Shen Miao would enter the palace alone, and if the matter of the imperial edict was raised at that time, it would not be easy for Shen Miao to refuse. Even if she didn't mention it, who knew what kind of threatening words the Empress would say? It was a sinister thing to let Shen Miao meet the Empress alone. Feng and Ning and Feng Zixian were somewhat worried, but Shen Miao advised them not to take it to heart. After the Feng siblings left, Luo Tan then asked, "Biao youngest sister, what to do now? Why don't we settle the marriage in the near future? Marriage is not something that can be settled in one night. One still need to exchange the 8 characters and invite the ice person to the scene. There are many matters and it would be too late before tomorrow," Shen Miao said. Luo Tan was startled, "So there are so many things." She then said, "Youngest Biao sister knows everything clearly." Shen Miao paused for a moment. Naturally she was clear that in her previous life, she was filled with joy as she watched all these things being completed one by one and could not wait to marry into the residence of the person she admired earlier. However, he did not know that it was a tomb that devoured people without spitting out their bones. Luo Shuiyan looked at Shen Miao seriously. "Jiao Jiao, tell mother, among these few people, who do you like?" "It can't be considered as liking." Shen Miao smiled, "Choose the most suitable one." "Mother, you don't have to be too anxious. It won't be too late to decide when I return from the palace tomorrow. Perhaps there will be more suitable people appearing." Luo Shuiyan was startled. Shen Miao was always indifferent to her marriage and did not seem to have any expectations towards her future husband, which made Luo Shuiyan's heart somewhat flustered. It was until after Shen Miao left that he muttered to himself, "Could it be that Jiao Jiao still has feelings for Prince Ding?" Shen Miao did not know of Luo Shuiyan's thoughts at all. She had already prepared for the worst, which was to perish together with the royal family. She had the determination to be a martyr, but she did not know if the Fu family had the intention to abandon their reputation. Even in the worst-case scenario, he couldn't lose hope. After all, he was still alive, right? As she was thinking like this, she glanced at the window and finally felt a bit irritated as she instructed Guyu, "Close the window more tightly. I want to rest." The crown prince had the intention to take Shen Miao as a secondary consort, and this led to the current officials not daring to have anything to do with the Shen family. This matter was in an uproar, and since it could reach the ears of the officials, naturally it would also reach the ears of the princes. In the residence of Prince Zhou, the two brothers, Prince Jing and Prince Zhou, were sitting at the table discussing the matter. After fighting with Old Six for so long, I didn't expect the crown prince to take advantage of the loophole in the end. Prince Zhou drank the wine angrily. The crown prince usually looks honest, but now he is smart. Prince Jing was calmer than his older brother as he shook his head. I think that this matter is not only the crown prince's idea but also Imperial Father's incitement. Imperial Father was originally dissatisfied with us and princely, so the crown prince is the rightful one. Imperial Father is biased towards the crown prince, so he wanted to give the Shen family's military power to the crown prince to help. Imperial Father is also muddled with age. Prince Zhou sneered. It is said that capable people do more work. That sickly crown prince did not even think about how many years he could use the Shen family's military power in his hands. Could it be that he would die before he could even warm it up and let others take advantage of it? These words were said very viciously, almost having the meaning of cursing the crown prince to die early. Even so, Prince Zhou's tone was very jealous. One knew that if the crown prince obtained the Shen family's military power, his strength would increase greatly. Not only would he be able to compete with him and Prince Li, he might even surpass them by a lot. Chapter 725. The crown prince had a unique advantage in reputation, and with the addition of the Shen family's military power, the odds of winning were much higher. How could Prince Zhou not be anxious? In that case, it is better to let that little girl of the Shen family marry to number 9. It is better than the crown prince. Prince Zhou said in a deep voice. Number 9? Prince Jing smiled meaningfully. Fourth older brother, number 9 is not as simple as you and I think. You mean the matter between Shen Wan and the king of Qin? Prince Zhou was puzzled. No matter how I look at it, it seems like someone is behind it. Even if it was true, it was only because he had the ambition. To be honest, among the 9 of us, who doesn't have ambitions for that position? Old Ninth didn't want to occupy anyone, he just wanted to be the only one. He had the ambition, but he also needed the ability to do so. He doesn't even participate much in the affairs of the imperial court. Which official is willing to follow him? Fu Xiaoyi and Shen Wan were very close in private and had an unclear relationship with the crown prince of Qin. This matter was heard by the other princes and they were vigilant against Fu Xiaoyi, but at the end they did not put it in the first place. There was no other reason, as Fu Xiaoyi did not participate in the court affairs for many years. Even if he had the ambition, he did not have the strength. He was just someone whose heart was higher than the heavens and his life was thinner than paper. Compared to him, there were more important enemies. Prince Jing shook his head. Fourth older brother must not underestimate number 9. I always feel that he hides very deeply. Zhou Wang waved his hand impatiently. Why do you keep mentioning 9th brother? I called you here today because I have something to discuss with you. Prince Zhou lowered his voice. We cannot look on helplessly as the Shen family's military power falls into the crown prince's hands. If the crown prince obtained the military power and now that the imperial heir grandson has been born and imperial father has the intention to support him, the chances of you and I will be even smaller. I have been fighting with Prince Li for so long, I do not want to be taken advantage of by the crown prince. What does 4th brother mean? This marriage cannot be done. Prince Zhou smiled cruelly. It would be best if we become enemies. There are thousands of ways to form enmity. Which one does 4th older brother want first? Prince Jing asked. Of course it's a blood feud. Prince Zhou put down the wine cup and said that Shen family's little girl also wholeheartedly thought of number 9 and would definitely not be willing to marry the crown prince. Since that's the case, we, the imperial family, will not force her to do anything against her will. Why don't we free her? It's not easy to make a move on Shen Miao. Prince Jing said, the last time Shen Miao was kidnapped, Shen Xian had doubled the number of guards for her and it was heavily guarded. How can one take action? Prince Zhou smiled. If we can't do it outside, we can do it in the palace. He said proudly, once we enter the palace, no matter who the guards are, they all have to wait outside. Once we enter the palace, it's our world. I have inquired about it. Tomorrow the little girl of the Shen family will enter the palace alone. After she enters the palace to see the Empress, it will be our chance. It will be the easiest to make a move at that time. Prince Jing said, it is easy to take action in the palace but it is easy to be suspected when one investigates. Hee, so this is a matter of killing two birds with one stone. Zhou Wang smiled. What do you think about making it sound like old Six's work? Prince Jing's eyes lit up. The two brothers and Prince Li's faction had been fighting for so many years and were evenly matched. If this time Shen Miao met with an accident in the palace, Shen Xian loved Shen Miao dearly and would definitely put the blame on the crown prince. If it was not that the crown prince had the intention to marry Shen Miao would not have met with an accident and the crown prince and the Shen family would be enemies. At the end when it was found out that it was done by Prince Li would not be able to gain any benefits. To be able to take care of two strong enemies without using a single soldier, why not? Prince Jing smiled, fourth older brother's idea is not bad but it needs to be arranged carefully so that there will be more flaws. Men, invite my aides in. Coincidentally, when the residence of Prince Zhou was discussing about the assassination of Shen Miao tomorrow, the residence of Prince Li was also racking their brains over this matter. Chapter 726. King Li smiled at the two brothers in front of him and said, what do you think? Prince Xiang was a cautious and timid person and when he saw Prince Li's smiling face, he could not help but shiver. King Li had always been a smiling tiger. On the surface, he looked amiable, but over the years, he had done many ruthless things. He said, isn't it too risky? When King Qing heard that, he said, what's so risky about that? One could not really let the crown prince marry the young lady of the Shen family and obtain the Shen family's military power for no reason. Sixth brother and Prince of Zhou have been fighting for so many years, but to no avail. That crown prince is sick, isn't he afraid that he won't have the life to spend it? Prince Cheng had always been careless with his words and did not care about the consequences. His words were very presumptuous, but it was obviously in line with Prince Li's intentions. He said, eighth brother is right. It is indeed not my wish for the crown prince to obtain the Shen family's military power. If this marriage is successful, not only me, the two brothers will also be implicated, and that cannot be done. I propose to assassinate the young lady of the Shen family to prevent future troubles. Even though the young lady of the Shen family is innocent, but in the end she was implicated by the crown prince. Prince Li smiled as he talked about the assassination. Even though his words were full of sympathy for Shen Miao's innocence, there was no trace of pity in his tone. But how are we going to put this matter on Prince Zhou? Prince Xiang asked softly. Prince Zhou is usually presumptuous and it is reasonable for him to do such a thing on impulse. Imperial father already had some complaints about him and when he wanted to support the crown prince, Imperial father would only blame him for losing the military power of the Shen family because of Prince Zhou. Prince Li pondered. Killing two birds with one stone. It's a good idea, Prince Qing said casually. I support sixth brother. King Xiang did not speak but it did not matter whether he spoke or not. He and King Cheng were both followers of King Li. King Li's decision also represented the two of them. If they succeeded, they would naturally ascend to the heavens. If they failed, they would suffer misfortune together. This was what he had understood from the very beginning, to share weal and woe together. Sighing slightly in his heart, he could only hope that the assassination of Shen Miao tomorrow would proceed smoothly. The night was as dark as ink, and the winter wind blew on his face. It was bitingly cold, as if someone was shaving his face with a knife. The water collected during the day turned into ice at night and was left outside the house to dry. By the next day, the ice was stuck to the ground and could not be moved. In front of the window on the upper floor of the inn, the purple-clad young man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His brows were tightly furrowed, and no one knew what he was thinking. A snow-white pigeon suddenly flew in from outside and landed on the windowsill in front of him. There was a thin layer of ice on its body. Flying outside in such cold weather, it was probably extraordinarily cold. Xie Jingxing removed a small silver tube from the pigeon's leg and threw the pigeon behind him. The charcoal fire was burning in the room, so it was warm and cozy. The pigeon tilted its body and flew to the desk in the room. It tilted its head and pecked the corn kernels in the small bowl on the desk. Xie Jingxing took out a small paper scroll from the silver tube and unfolded it to read. He threw it into the charcoal stove and turned it into ashes. Tai Yi walked in from the door and walked to Xie Jingxing's back. "Master, the carriage and horses have been prepared and will depart for the capital tomorrow morning." Xie Jingxing replied, "N." Tai Yi however did not retreat and looked at Xie Jingxing's back, seemingly hesitating if he should speak or not. "Speak if you have something to say," Xie Jingxing said without turning his head back. Tai Yi was shocked and quickly said, "Master, there is news from the Ding capital that these few days Shen Xian is looking for a suitable young talent for 5th Shen young lady, and seemed to have the intention to marry." Xie Jingxing did not turn back. Tai Yi looked at the other person's back and did not know why, but he felt his scalp tingling. He also did not know if these words should be said or not, and his heart was complaining incessantly. Ji Yushu and Gao Yang from the Ding capital did not mention about this matter in the letter that was sent back. Now that Tai Yi mentioned it, in the future when Xie Jingxing blamed the both of them, it would seem that Tai Yi was the one instigating it. Chapter 727. But if he did not say it, the matter was of great importance. If Xie Jingxing were to find out about it, he would have made a big mistake and he would not need to be a secret guard anymore. Perhaps he would even lose his life. Between loyalty and his life, Tai Yi very decisively chose the latter. He said, "Su family's Su Ming Feng, Luo family's Luo Ling and the eldest son of the Feng family, Feng Zixian, have all visited the Shen mansion." Feng Zixian. The youth turned and stared at Tai Yi's eyes. Why did Feng Zixian visit? Tai Yi's back turned cold and braced himself to say, "Because Shen Xian is anxious to marry off 5th Shen young lady, as there is news from the palace that the crown prince has the intention to marry 5th Shen young lady as a secondary consort. The Shen family do not wish for 5th Shen young lady to marry into the eastern palace and wanted to marry 5th Shen young lady off before the imperial edict comes down. The Feng family's young lady and 5th Shen young lady are good friends and specially looked for older brother to come over to solve the problem." "When did the news spread from the palace?" Xie Jingxing slowly asked, but his voice seemed to be coated with a layer of ice. Tai Yi did not dare to look at Xie Jingxing's eyes and his head was almost on the ground as he said, 5 days ago. "The news from 5 days ago only arrived now." Xie Jingxing did not get angry but laughed instead. There seemed to be anger in his beautiful peach blossom eyes as he said, "This prince do not know when did one raise a group of trash." The air in the room suddenly turned cold and seemed to be colder than outside. Even with the warm charcoal fire, the pigeon on the table made a goo sound and retracted its head back into its feathers. Tai Yi wanted to cry but had no tears, but he still had to finish the words that he did not say. Today the palace sent a message to the Shen family. Tomorrow 5th Shen young lady will enter the palace alone as the Empress has something to discuss with her. Before the words were finished, one saw that purple-clad youth's figure flashed and was already at the door. He casually pulled the fox fur coat that was hanging and said coldly, "Prepare the horse." Tai Yi was startled. "Master, is it not tomorrow morning?" Xie Jingxing coldly swept a glance at him. Tai Yi shivered and did not dare to say anything else. This night, the wind and snow intertwined and the cold air penetrated the bones. Some people tossed and turned on the warm bed and were unable to sleep, while some people were in the magnificent residence discussing murderous plots. Some people naturally lived in the imperial palace, and there were also some people who rode their precious horses thousands of miles away. Some rejoice, some grieve, some worry, some triumph. The vast rivers and mountains of Ming-Chi were picturesque, and the Ding capital was filled with songs and dances to celebrate peace. At the end of the year, there were cheers and laughter everywhere, but no one could see the turbulence under the calm lake. In one of the rooms in Prince Ding's residence, there was someone playing chess with himself. The man was dressed in a green robe. The chessboard on the table was in a mess. The white characters and black pieces were intertwined on the board. It looked extremely complicated. With every step he took, he had to think for a long time. It was as if he had reached a bottleneck, but he just couldn't bring himself to play the black piece in his hand. The flame of the lamp swayed slightly and was almost extinguished. He got up and refilled the lamp oil, and the room became bright again. This man's eyes were bright and clear, and he had the air of a modest gentleman. It was as if he was proud and unyielding in his heart. However, there was sadness in his eyes that could not be dispersed. This person was Pei Lang. Pei Lang looked at the snowy night outside the window and sighed deeply. Fu Xiuyi's move in chess was indeed not bad. Shifting the trouble to the east, no matter if it was a success or failure, it had nothing to do with Fu Xiuyi. No matter what the result was, whether it was the crown prince being unlucky, Prince Zhou or Prince Li being unlucky, or the Shen family being unlucky, it was a good thing for Fu Xiuyi. In this kind of chess game, Shen Miao had almost no other path to take. Even if there was, it would be the last resort. With this game, Fu Xiuyi would definitely win and not lose. Pei Lang was somewhat worried for Shen Miao. He also did not know why he was worried for Shen Miao. If Shen Miao died, then he would be able to follow Fu Xiuyi. Fu Xiuyi was very reliant on him, and if he did not see wrongly, this person had the talent to become an emperor. In the future, his chickens and dogs would ascend to heaven and he would be able to enjoy endless riches and glory. He would also be able to better protect Luing in secret. But he was still not willing for Shen Miao to lose. These days Fu Xiuyi suspected that there was a traitor in the residence and doubled the guards in Prince Ding's residence. Even a fly would not be able to fly in, not to mention the news out. He had no way to communicate with Shen Miao through letters and could only be anxious in the dark. Hearing that Shen Miao was going to make a trip to the palace alone tomorrow, it just so happened that he was also going to the palace tomorrow. Even though he was Fu Xiuyi's aide, he was also a small official. Shen Miao had no way out, and at the end of the road, would there be any other way out? After a moment, Pei Lang looked at the chess game in front of him. It was already a dilemma and there was no need to continue playing. One of his hands was placed on the corner of the table and suddenly flipped it. With just a light flip, the entire board of chess pieces instantly fell to the ground, big and small, making a crisp sound. The ground was a mess. Nothing could be seen from the original situation. Chapter 728. Early the next morning, Shen Miao entered the palace. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian were worried about her and let her bring a lot of guards. But the guards of the Shen residence could not follow Shen Miao at all times, and when they reached the palace doors, they had to wait outside. Before Shen Miao left, she wore all the big and small jewelry that Xie Jingxing gave her. Regarding the Ming-Chi's imperial palace, she never feared to speculate with the greatest malice and was only afraid that there would be an accident, so she was fully prepared. When she reached the palace doors, Gu Yu and the rest were waiting outside with the guards, and Shen Miao was led by a palace maid towards Kunning Palace. Along the way, the palace maid felt somewhat strange. The path from the palace doors to Kunning Palace was not simple and one had to go through several corridors and some gardens, but Shen Miao was very familiar with the path. She did not even need the palace maid to remind her as she lifted her feet to walk over the old and loose steps. The palace maid's heart was suspicious. Could it be that Shen Miao came to Kunning Palace once and remembered this path so well that she did not make any mistakes? She did not expect that this Kun Ning Palace was the place where Shen Miao lived in her previous life, and every grass and tree was engraved in her heart. Thus, in the face of the grand furnishings and exquisite displays, she turned a blind eye to them. If one looked carefully, one could see a flash of disgust in Shen Miao's eyes. Others did not know about these. When they reached Kun Ning Palace, the palace maid was combing the Empress' hair. Shen Miao waited for a while before the Empress let her in. Today, Consort Dong Shu did not come over, and there was only the Empress as a master. She was wearing some formal court attire and had a 9 phoenix hairpin on her head. Her makeup was expensive, and there was a sense of oppression coming from her. Shen Miao took a look and understood in her heart. Did this really think that she was a young lady who was not familiar with worldly affairs and wanted to use the imperial family's prestige to threaten her? Force her to take the initiative to let go. No wonder Shen Miao deliberately sent Luo Shuiyan away. If Shen Miao was really a 16-year-old young lady, dressed so formally in front of the Empress and with a few vague threatening words, she would feel that she was alone and helpless. Her heart would be flustered and she would not know what happened. But how was Shen Miao a young lady? The person in front of her was the Empress. She was the Empress in her previous life. She was more knowledgeable, arrogant, and suffered more hardships than this one. So, she really didn't care about the name of a fox borrowing the tiger's might. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down and a humble smile surfaced. The Empress slowly frowned. Shen Miao's reaction was somewhat different from what she thought. She did not know if Shen Miao was deliberately pretending to be confused or was originally stupid. Her eyes landed on the bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist and slightly narrowed her eyes before smiling. This bracelet is of good quality. Come forward and let Ben Gong take a look. Shen Miao went forward as instructed, and the Empress held Shen Miao's hands. The bracelet was made of a rare jade material from an unknown place. It was bright green and extremely smooth. Just as she was about to praise a few words, she heard Shen Miao laughing, replying to your ladyship, this official's daughter's hairpin, necklace, and earrings are also very good looking. The Empress was taken aback and looked at it seriously. Her mouth couldn't help but twitch. The cat's eye hairpin was matched with pearl earrings, and the pearl earrings were matched with an amber necklace. As for the bracelets and miscellaneous jewelry, there was no need to mention them. They were clearly all exquisite and valuable jewelry, so why did she feel so awkward stuffing them all onto her body? The Empress suddenly did not want to praise Shen Miao's jewelry and even lost interest in the bracelet. Her heart was filled with indescribable contempt. Initially it was said that the young lady of the Shen family was an idiot who only knew about gold and silver. Afterwards it was thought that she had changed her appearance, but looking at it today, she was not the same as before. Once she thought of marrying Shen Miao to the crown prince, the Empress was not happy. If it was not because the Shen family's military power could help the crown prince, the Empress would not be willing to let such a vulgar female marry into the Eastern Palace. Chapter 729. The Empress put down Shen Miao's hand and said, Ben Gong came here today to talk to you. She sighed, that day I had mentioned to your mother that you are not engaged and your age is just right. Ben Gong looks like you and wants to be a matchmaker. Naturally Ben Gong will not force others and one must like to be a matchmaker. Shen Miao lowered her head and did not speak. The Empress patted her hand, do you think Ben Gong is living well? Is it glorious or not? Shen Miao sneered in her heart, but on the surface she replied with a smile, your ladyship is living well and very glorious. Marrying into the imperial family and being pampered and protected by powerful people, every female would be able to live well and glorious. Ben Gong's luck is good. Now that you also have such good luck, do you want to live well and glorious? These words were almost tempting. Shen Miao's lips slightly raised, but her words were humble and fearful. She suddenly knelt down on the ground and said, this official's daughter is currently living very well and do not dare to be compared to others and do not dare to be compared to your ladyship. Plead your ladyship to spare this official's daughter's life. The Empress was stunned. She did not expect that Shen Miao would have such a reaction. There were not a few people who wanted to climb up to be a phoenix, and the Empress knew that as long as it was a female, they would have some vanity in their hearts. She used herself as an example to tempt. Shen Miao was young and easy to be persuaded, so she was afraid that she would not be tempted. As long as Shen Miao slightly relaxed her mouth and followed her words, then the imperial family would be able to rightfully push the initiative to the Shen family for the bestowal of marriage. Even if one wanted to be a robber, one would have to cover it up a little. Who knew that Shen Miao would have such a reaction? There was no temptation, no hesitation, and instead fear. The Empress thought in her heart unhappily, could it be that it was so scary to be an Empress? Or was it that this young lady of the Shen family was actually as timid as a mouse and as stupid as a cow? She did not understand her hints and thought that a disaster was imminent. Really mud that could not hold up the wall. In the following period of time, no matter how the Empress spoke tactfully, harshly, or gently, Shen Miao always had a humble and fearful look. And it was precisely this look that made her mouth very tight and not a single word could be pried out. At the end, the Empress was somewhat angry and asked Shen Miao to return, thinking that this matter would not work from Shen Miao's end and one had to discuss a new method with Emperor Wen Hui. Because when the Empress let Shen Miao leave, she was very dissatisfied with Shen Miao's attitude. Even the palace maids of Kun Ning Palace did not care much about Shen Miao and handed Shen Miao over to a passing little eunuch to send Shen Miao out of the palace. The young eunuch naturally agreed. The little eunuch brought Shen Miao out of the palace, and after a few turns, there were many palaces in the depths of the palace. Other than some side halls where the concubines lived, there were even more small rooms where the eunuchs and palace maids lived. This little eunuch brought Shen Miao to a secluded place, and after bypassing a garden, almost facing an abandoned garden, Shen Miao stopped and said, "This is not the direction to leave the palace. Where do you want to bring me to?" Her hand quietly pressed on the bracelet in her sleeves. No one was more familiar with Ming Qi's palace than her, so she knew which direction was the most advantageous to escape from. That little eunuch was surprised for a moment before whispering, "Gentleman Pei wants to see young lady." Pei Lang. Shen Miao slightly frowned. After thinking for a moment, Shen Miao still followed the little eunuch forward. Pei Lang had not communicated with her for a long time, and Shen Miao thought that Fu Xiu-yi had discovered some clues about Pei Lang. But when she sent Mo Qing over to inquire, he seemed to have seen Pei Lang in the residence of Prince Ding, and it seemed that he was safe and sound. If Fu Xiu-yi suspected Pei Lang, he would definitely not let Pei Lang be so free and easy. Chapter 730. If Pei Lang was looking for her, it must be something very important. There were many coincidences in the world. What Shen Miao did not know was that the imperial family had the intention to arrange a marriage for her and implicated everyone. Even though Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were relatives and ran around without stopping, some other people also rushed in wave after wave. For example, Luo Ling was able to express his sincerity, Su Mingfeng's marriage proposal by a freak combination of factors, and Feng Zixian lending a helping hand. There were thousands of connections in the world, and those connections were like the crystal threads spat out by spiders. They were arranged in their respective positions, and one day, they crisscrossed and formed a fine and dense net, forming the most astonishing and unbelievable coincidence in the world. Princess Rong Xian entered the palace. Her health was not very good, and she had become thinner and thinner in recent years. Throughout the year, the number of days he would enter the palace could be counted, but today he seemed to be in a hurry. The palace maid wanted to inform, but Princess Rong Xian waved her hands and said, "Ben Gong did not bring an invitation and have important matters to discuss with imperial older brother. There is no need to inform." How would the guards at the palace doors dare to stop them? Even though Princess Rong Xian did not show her face much nowadays, she was after all the daughter that the late emperor doted on and had a strong temperament. If he were to anger her, there would be consequences for him in the future, so he immediately let her go. The palace maid wanted to find a sedan chair for Princess Rong Xian but was rejected by Princess Rong Xian. Princess Rong Xian said, it would be inconvenient to use a sedan chair if walking on a small path. You guys support me, I'll walk slowly. Princess Rong Xian's heart was also anxious. She did not ask about the matters of the court and stayed in her own princess residence every day. If it was not that she heard the servants talking about Shen Miao's matter when she passed by the courtyard, she would not know that the imperial family had the intention to marry Shen Miao to the crown prince. Not to mention Xie Jingxing, Princess Rong Xian also wanted to protect Shen Miao. Princess Rong Xian herself also admired Shen Miao very much. As a member of the imperial family, Princess Rong Xian knew that when a female married in, it would look grand on the surface but it might not be true happiness. Moreover, Shen Miao was not a woman who was obsessed with wealth and glory, so it was even more unnecessary for her. If she really married into the Eastern Palace, Shen Miao would not be happy for the rest of her life. Princess Rong Xian rushed to look for Emperor Wen Hui, hoping to change her imperial brother's mind. Thus, he took a shortcut and walked on a small path. Shen Miao arrived at a remote pavilion. The pavilion was hidden in the forest, with its back facing a long corridor. There were a few houses along the corridor, making it convenient to hide. Pei Lang walked out of the house. The little eunuch stood guard outside for them. Shen Miao nodded her head to Pei Lang as a form of greeting before asking, what urgent matter does gentleman Pei have to discuss here? Prince Ding had sealed the residence and there is no way to send you a message. Pei Lang said, the idea of the crown prince marrying you into the family was suggested by Prince Ding. Shen Miao raised her eyebrows. Pei Lang saw that she was not surprised and asked, you know about it? Guessed that it was his doing. Shen Miao lightly said, with the crown prince's brain, why would he think of me for no reason? Pei Lang was somewhat puzzled as Shen Miao's tone of voice seemed to be very familiar with the crown prince and Fu Xiu-yi. But Shen Miao was an unmarried daughter and did not have the opportunity to interact with the princes, so how would she understand the personalities of the princes? One fear that Shen Xian was not as familiar as Shen Miao. This deserted garden had once been haunted by ghosts, so no one usually came here. Thus Pei Lang was not worried that someone would pass by. He frowned, about the marriage, what do you plan to do? Shen Miao was somewhat surprised. Pei Lang had always been a person who would only analyze the pros and cons and would not bring in personal feelings, thus it was rare for him to ask about her marriage. After all, how she saw this marriage was insignificant to the overall situation. Chapter 731. Shen Miao said, let nature take its course. You cannot marry the crown prince. Pei Lang said. It is not important to marry or not. What Shen Miao hated the most was Pei Lang's determined look, as if he had grasped everything in his hands, thus he could not see the struggles of others and would only do what he thought was right. She coldly said, even if I marry over, I might not live well and would use my own methods to achieve my own goal. The road is walked by oneself and every road has a different way to walk. Gentleman Pei would not think that there is only one road in this world, right? I do not mean what you think. Pei Lang sighed, marrying into the Eastern Palace would allow you to walk your own path. But to use your marriage as the price, this is too cruel to you and the gains do not make up for the losses. Shen Miao's heart moved slightly as she looked at Pei Lang. Pei Lang actually said, to use your marriage as the price, this is too cruel to you. One had to know that in the previous lifetime when Wen Yu was going to marry the Xiongnu, Shen Miao once begged Pei Lang because Pei Lang was Fu Xiuyi's confidant and Fu Xiuyi would always consider Pei Lang's words. At that time Pei Lang told Shen Miao, your ladyship, using the princess's marriage to exchange for the safety of Ming Qi and the welfare of the people, is it not a good thing? Pei Lang, who was good at observing the world's overall situation, would actually put the overall situation in second place. Pei Lang did not notice Shen Miao's expression and said, the imperial family will spread the news and no one in the entire Ding capital would dare to marry into the Shen residence. Shen Miao said, so what about that? If it is not possible, you marry me. Pei Lang said. The air seemed to have become extremely stiff in a moment, but out of Pei Lang's expectations, Shen Miao's gaze that stared at him did not have any surprise or shyness. There was not even the slightest trace of being moved. Looking at it seriously, it seemed to be somewhat cold. She asked, what are you talking about? Pei Lang's heart seemed to be poured with a basin of cold water, making it strangely cold. It was obvious that he was only judging the pros and cons of the matter, but under Shen Miao's clear eyes, it seemed that some of his hidden wishes were seen by others. In a moment, he became embarrassed. Pei Lang avoided Shen Miao's gaze and calmed himself down before continuing, since you cannot marry into the Eastern Palace, you have to marry someone else so that you can have a way out. If you marry me, you might be able to resist for a while. Why is Mr. Pei helping me? Shen Miao softly opened her mouth and there seemed to be some other tone in her words which made it hard for one to understand. She said, we only have a transaction relationship because of Lu Ying, or rather a master and servant relationship. I am the master, you are the servant. From the beginning to the end, I was the one who threatened you. If I was imprisoned, wouldn't that be exactly what you wanted? Following Fu Xiu Yi is 1,000 or 10,000 times better than following me. Gentleman Pei helps me so much that if one did not know, one would think that you are sincere. There was a hint of mockery in her words, and Pei Lang felt uncomfortable when he heard it. He did not know why Shen Miao was sometimes polite to him and sometimes seemed to be hostile to him. Perhaps women were fickle like this? But he did not know the answer to Shen Miao's question. Because he didn't know why he did it. Shen Miao smiled gently, even if I marry Gentleman Pei, it would be the last resort. What kind of identity does Gentleman Pei use to marry me? How would one explain to Prince Ding? You will not expose your identity because of me. Gentleman Pei is a good chess piece and I do not want to use it so casually. Moreover. She slightly raised her chin, marriage and a husband to me are not as important as you all think. It is only a person sharing the same bed, eating together and sleeping together. Other than these, there is no difference from strangers. I do not care who to marry. I also do not care if one would be forced to marry. My happiness or happiness will not depend on this. Chapter 732. Pei Lang kept on shaking his head when he heard it. He wanted to deny Shen Miao's words as he felt that Shen Miao was still young and did not know how important a lifelong event was to a female. At this moment she was only acting in a fit of pique, and in the future when she understood the reason and suffered, she would then regret it. However, when he looked up and saw Shen Miao's expression, he could not say a word. Shen Miao's expression was serious. She was cold and indifferent and had a faint weariness towards the matters of the outside world, as if she would subconsciously feel disgusted at the mention of it. She really did not care. But how would a female not care about the person that accompanied her for life? Pei Lang looked at Shen Miao blankly. When the atmosphere was in a deadlock, one heard a malicious ridicule coming from behind, did not think that there was such an affair. Shen Miao suddenly turned back and saw that one did not know when two masked black-clad people appeared behind her. These two people were carrying long swords in their hands as they pounced towards Shen Miao. Pei Lang quickly pulled Shen Miao to dodge and Shen Miao shouted, "Who are you? Shen young lady must not blame us. If you want to blame, blame yourself for blocking the path of others." The two of them laughed sinisterly. One of them rushed towards Pei Lang while the other held his sword and headed towards Shen Miao. It was a killing move that did not leave any way of survival. Shen Miao's heart secretly knew that it was not good. She did not think that Pei Lang would find this place and it would be convenient for others to silence them. She pressed the bracelet on her wrist, but this bracelet could only be used in close proximity. At the critical moment, one saw two stones flying out from the air and without any deviation, hit the knees of the two black-clad people. Both of them cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Shwa shwa. 2 rays of sword light flashed and 2 people suddenly rushed out and stabbed the black-clad person's sword into the other party's chest. Everything happened too fast and there was no chance for one to breathe. The 2 people that appeared behind were dressed as palace guards and looked at Shen Miao and made a bow. Pei Lang was about to speak when he saw a person jumping down from the roof. The person was tall and had a purple gold robe and a silver mask with a pair of peach blossom eyes that were as sharp as a knife. It was Prince Rui. "Your Highness Prince Rui," Pei Lang murmured. He was smart and with a little thought, the 2 guards in front of him should be Prince Rui's subordinates. As for the black-clothed man who wanted to kill them to silence them, he didn't know who he was. Even though he did not know what was the relationship between Shen Miao and Prince Rui, Pei Lang did not dare to neglect and was extremely vigilant in his heart, but a polite smile floated on his face as he cupped his hands. "Many thanks to your Highness Prince Rui for lending a helping hand." Prince Rui did not speak and coldly swept a glance at him. Although Pei Lang couldn't see his expression through the half-silver mask, he felt that his gaze was exceptionally cold, sending chills down his spine. Shen Miao frowned but Prince Rui had already grabbed her arm and turned to walk out. Pei Lang was shocked and quickly called out, "Prince Rui must not." However, the 2 guards in front of her suddenly blocked her way. These 2 bodyguards looked fierce and their bodies exuded the aura of a devil who would kill without batting an eye. Pei Lang was a scholar and did not know martial arts. Even if he wanted to help, he could not. It was Shen Miao who was being dragged and stumbled along with them. She turned her head back and said with a calm face, "Gentleman Pei, go back first. I still have some matters with Prince Rui." Prince Rui's footsteps became faster. Pei Lang stared at the 2 disappearing figures. The 2 guards in front of him looked at him in confusion before they left. But there were still 2 corpses on the ground and Pei Lang could not stay for long. He did not know what was the relationship between Shen Miao and Prince Rui, but in his heart, there was an emptiness in that instant. Chapter 733. Shen Miao's arm was in pain from Xie Jingxing's pull. Xie Jingxing did not say a word and walked very fast. She tried her best to keep up with Xie Jingxing's pace but the other person was tall and had long legs, thus she could not catch up and almost tripped over a few times. At the end, the anger in Shen Miao's heart rose and she said angrily, "Let go of me." Xie Jingxing walked to an empty corridor before suddenly releasing his hand. Shen Miao was grabbed by him for most of the way and when her hand was suddenly released, she almost fell down. After he stood still, his anger surged and he said, "You're crazy." This garden was a little more outside compared to the previously deserted garden. Shen Miao was somewhat afraid of being seen by others and wanted to walk out by herself but was pulled back by Xie Jingxing. He pushed her against the wall and held down her hands as he looked at her coldly. He wore a silver mask which revealed the fine contours of his face. His chin was beautiful but his thin lips were tightly pursed. There was no longer the cynical smile in his eyes and instead it was anger. He said word by word, "Shen Miao, you only have this little ability." Shen Miao frowned as she looked at him. Xie Jingxing however reached out to hold her chin and forced her to raise her head to look at him. He looked down at Shen Miao from above, like a hunter looking down at his prey. Shen Miao did not like to be looked down at from above and struggled to leave. But she was after all a female, so how could she compete with Xie Jingxing's strength? That little bit of strength was like tickling Xie Jingxing's body. Xie Jingxing easily resolved her struggle and even slightly bent his knee to press against her leg, making her unable to move. But this stance was even more ambiguous. Shen Miao asked, "What do you want to do?" Xie Jingxing's tone was unable to discern whether he was happy or angry. Luo Ling, Su Ming Feng, Feng Zixian and now Pei Lang. So many people are heroes saving the beauty. I have underestimated you. Shen Miao did not speak. The strength in his hands suddenly increased and Shen Miao's chin was in pain as she frowned slightly. But that young man gritted his teeth, do not care who to marry and do not care if one will be forced to marry. You want to marry into the residence of the crown prince? Shen Miao's heart moved as it seemed that the conversation between her and Pei Lang was heard by Xie Jingxing. What this person loved to do the most was to observe everything in the dark. If it was usual days, Shen Miao would not feel anything, but at this moment, there was some anger in her heart. It was as if someone had seen a secret that he didn't want to be made public, or if someone had seen his terrible side, and he was angry because he was ashamed. She sneered and said, what does it matter if I marry the crown prince? Anyway, you know that I want to be the empress. The crown prince will eventually sit on the emperor's throne. Perhaps when I enter the eastern palace and fight to death the crown prince's consort, I will replace her and be the future Shen Empress of Mingqi. What is wrong with this? These words were somewhat too vicious and Xie Jingxing's face became even more livid. He also smiled, but his smile was cold. It's a pity that the crown prince cannot sit on the throne. Shen Miao did not know where Xie Jingxing's inexplicable anger came from, but at this moment she was being questioned in such an embarrassing position, she felt very ashamed and wronged. Perhaps one would find it hard to grasp one's emotions under impulse, just like how she did not know where her grievances came from, but wanted to vent out all the unhappy things that she had been passively feeling these days. Xie Jingxing pinched her chin, pressed against her legs and imprisoned her hands. He was so unbelievably handsome that even when he was angry, there was a different kind of charm to it. That evil air lingered around him, making Shen Miao believe in a moment that the Xie Jingxing who was frivolous, careless, and did not care about anything was only a part of him. The other part of him was cold, rigid, and when he was angry, it made one's heart turn cold. No matter how good the scenery was, it was a pity that Shen Miao did not have the mood to appreciate it. She said, even if he does not sit on the throne, it has nothing to do with you. Shen Miao looked up at him and tried to speak calmly, why did your highness Prince Rui come to question me? My relationship with you does not seem to be that good. What does it have to do with you who I marry or not marry? When the words were said, Xie Jingxing smiled instead. He hooked up his lips with a smile that was not a smile and pulled Shen Miao's chin towards himself. When you think of ways to haggle with me over every ounce, when you bargain with me about business, when you borrow my hands to kill, you are very capable. Why is it that until now, you only have this little ability? Shen Miao's eyes felt a little sour. She really hated Xie Jingxing's current actions. However, she could not break free and hated herself for being so passive. She felt that her eyes were foggy and it was very uncomfortable. Xie Jingxing frowned and said, you are not allowed to cry. Shen Miao's tears were about to fall as she felt extremely ashamed in her heart. She was a person who had lived for 2 lifetimes and actually wanted to cry just because of a few words from Xie Jingxing. What kind of appearance was this? But the grievances in her heart could not be relieved. She felt that her entire person had become chaotic. She was not willing to lose her face and had no way to break free. In a moment of desperation, Shen Miao glared at Xie Jingxing and said angrily, Xie Jingxing, do not go too far. Xie Jingxing. An exclamation was heard from the bushes at the other end. Chapter 734. Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing suddenly turned back and saw a person stumbling out from the bushes. When it neared, Shen Miao's body could not help but stiffen and subconsciously looked at Xie Jingxing's expression. But because Xie Jingxing was wearing a mask, one could not see anything. That person was Princess Rong Xian. Princess Rong Xian originally wanted to take a shortcut to enter, but when she came to this place, she saw Shen Miao being pulled by an unfamiliar male. Princess Rong Xian quickly let the palace maids wait outside and followed up herself. If others were to see Shen Miao together with an unfamiliar male, one feared that it would lead to rumors. Princess Rong Xian could trust Shen Miao's character. But just now she saw that Shen Miao did not seem to be willing and was afraid that Shen Miao was entangled by one of the princes in the palace or had gotten into trouble, thus she had the intention to help Shen Miao out of trouble. But it was not good to rush forward as it would be a misunderstanding. Initially she was far away and could not hear clearly what both of them were talking about, but after seeing that Shen Miao seemed to be about to cry, she anxiously walked forward and coincidentally heard Shen Miao's words, "Xia Jing Xing, do not go too far." Princess Rong Exan cried out involuntarily. But one saw that tall and straight figure turning around, and it was an unfamiliar young male with half a silver mask on his face. He slightly nodded his head to her. Princess Rong Exan quickly walked forward, and at this time she saw that this male was Prince Rui. Prince Rui from the Great Liang. When he first came to the Ming Qi and entered the palace, Princess Rong Exan had seen him before. But she did not care about these court matters and did not deliberately inquire about it. At this moment when she saw that this person was Prince Rui, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. But just now when Shen Miao said Xia Jing Xing, it was indeed Xia Jing Xing. She did not hear wrongly. Princess Rong Exan looked at Shen Miao with some questioning. "Shen young lady, just now you called His Highness Prince Rui Xia Jing Xing." Before Shen Miao could speak, Prince Rui took the initiative to speak. He said, "This prince's name is Xia Yuan, little name Jing Xing." Just now Shen young lady called this prince's little name. Shen Miao's heart was slightly relieved, thinking that Xia Jing Xing's reaction this time was really fast and was always able to find a reason to brush it off. When he saw Princess Rong Exan's strange expression, he suddenly reacted and cursed Xia Jing Xing in his heart. Other than relatives, only wives or lovers would call each other by their Xiao name. She called Xia Jing Xing by his Xiao name, and who knew what would happen in Princess Rong Exan's eyes. Xia Jing Xing definitely did it on purpose. Princess Rong Exan swept a glance between Prince Rui and Shen Miao before finally fixing her eyes on Prince Rui. There were some who looked similar, such as this purple robe. To be able to wear purple robes in such a noble and otherworldly manner, it could only be that naughty and mischievous youth who walked on horseback. But there was also something different about him. That unfamiliar, somewhat cold, decisive and ruthless aura that only a person in a high position would have. It was completely different from the youth in her memories. Xia Jing Xing had long died. He died on the battlefield of the northern borderlands, with 10,000 arrows piercing through his heart. There was a sudden stab of pain in her heart, and Princess Rong Exan suddenly covered her heart and bent down. No matter how many times she thought of Xia Jing Xing's death, she was unable to let it go. After Princess Yu Qing's death, she treated Xia Jing Xing as her own son. To lose a son in middle age, a white-haired person sending off a black-haired person, her sorrow was no less than Xia Ding's. Shen Miao quickly went forward to help her up, but that purple-clad youth stood with his hands behind his back. He lightly swept a glance at her and did not move at all. Princess Rong Exan's lips could not help but reveal a trace of a bitter smile. Yes, how could Prince Rui be Xia Jing Xing? If it was Xia Jing Xing, how could he be so indifferent, as if he was looking at a stranger, watching her struggle in this? If Xia Jing Xing was still alive, how could he bear to see her in such pain? Chapter 735. Princess Rong Exan waved her hands. "Why are you here?" Shen Miao answered, "Her Majesty the Empress let me enter the palace." Princess Rong Exan frowned and looked at Xia Jing Xing before asking, "Why is Prince Rui also here?" Shen Miao glanced at Xia Jing Xing and said, "When I came out from the palace, the little eunuch who led the way had something to do, and after waiting for a long time, one got lost and coincidentally met Your Highness Prince Rui, thus one asked Your Highness Prince Rui to point the way for me." These words were almost blatantly lying. Just now Princess Rong Exan had clearly seen that it was Prince Rui who pulled Shen Miao all the way here. Moreover, Shen Miao also called Prince Rui's little name, so the relationship between the two of them was not ordinary. Princess Rong Exan was inexplicably somewhat angry. In the beginning, when Xie Jingxing brought Shen Miao to the princess residence, Princess Rong Xian thought that Xie Jingxing treated Shen Miao specially, and as she had more contact with Shen Miao, she liked Shen Miao even more. Thus Princess Rong Xian had the intention to matchmake Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing. If it was not for Xie Jingxing's death in battle, perhaps this marriage would have succeeded. Now Shen Miao had a close relationship with another male, and this male's name was also coincidentally Jingxing. It was like once things were taken by others, and Princess Rong Xian's heart did not feel good. She also knew that it was impossible for Shen Miao not to marry for a lifetime, but Prince Rui was after all not a person of Ming Qi. Moreover, Princess Rong Xian had lived for most of her life and could see people clearly. This Prince Rui's actions were strange, and his entire body was full of danger. He was not a simple man, and if Shen Miao were to fall in love with this man, one feared that it would be too complicated. As such, Ben Gong will represent Shen young lady to thank your highness Prince Rui. Princess Rong Xian said. But he tried his best to draw a clear line between Shen Miao and Prince Rui. Prince Rui nodded. Since the eunuch leading the way has disappeared, I have many palace maids. I'll have them bring you out. There is no need to trouble Prince Rui for the rest of the journey. Princess Rong Xian added. This attitude was clearly to guard against Prince Rui. Prince Rui didn't say anything else. He responded lightly and left first. After Prince Rui left, Princess Rong Xian then gave a sigh of relief and asked Shen Miao, "How did you get to know him?" Shen Miao did not expect that she would suddenly meet Princess Rong Xian today, and even more did not expect that Princess Rong Xian would hear the conversation between her and Xie Jingxing. She could not help but secretly complain. Normally Xie Jingxing's secret guards had good eyes and ears and would even be able to catch a mouse running by. Today, at such a crucial time, one did not know if they were blind that even Princess Rong Xian did not discover it. She said, "One had coincidentally met your highness Prince Rui a few times and can be considered as acquaintances." Princess Rong Xian looked at her deeply and said, "Since you are not willing to say, Ben Gong will not force you to say it. It is just that. This person is not a Ming Qi's person and might have a plot against you. You are a smart young lady, and there are some things that you have to grasp yourself. Even if you do not think for yourself, you have to think for your parents and eldest brother." He was actually afraid that Shen Miao would be cheated by a man. Shen Miao did not know whether to laugh or cry in her heart. Since the misunderstanding had reached to this point, it seemed that it could not be resolved. Princess Rong Xian touched her chest and panted a few times. Upon seeing this, Shen Miao asked, "Where is the princess feeling uncomfortable?" "It is a heart disease that existed in the early years." Princess Rong Xian shook her head, "These few days it is very serious." Shen Miao saw that she was in pain and vaguely remembered that in the previous lifetime, Princess Rong Xian also had a heart disease, and the imperial physician said not to worry too much, lest the heart disease acted up and the pain would be severe. She said, "The princess should look for an imperial physician to take a good look, or go to the commoners to inquire about a doctor who specializes in treating heart diseases. It is very sad to be in pain like this. No harm." Princess Rong Xian waved her hands. "Ben Gong have lived till now and have enjoyed what one should enjoy and what one should not enjoy. This life is not a loss. Most likely one will not live for long, and Ben Gong also do not want to be tormented." Her voice gradually became lower. "After all, there is nothing worth to miss." Chapter 736. Shen Miao knew that she was thinking of Xie Jingxing again and did not know how to comfort her, so she could only say, "Little Marquis would not be happy to see princess like this. If he really cared about me as his Imu, he would not be so heartless to leave." Princess Rong Xian put away the sadness on her face and patted Shen Miao's hands. "Ben Gong had heard about Imperial older brother's intention to arrange a marriage for you. Ben Gong's visit to the palace today was to mention this matter to Imperial older brother. Shen Miao, you are also not willing to marry the crown prince, right?" Shen Miao did not expect that Princess Rong Xian would intercede for her, and for a moment she sighed. In the previous lifetime she tried to please Princess Rong Xian, but all she got was Princess Rong Xian's contempt and disdain. In this lifetime, because of Xie Jingxing's relationship, Princess Rong Xian changed her view of her and was even willing to fight for Emperor Wen Hui's decision. Even though Shen Miao knew that Princess Rong Xian would not be able to control Emperor Wen Hui's decision, but she would remember this favor in her heart. Shen Miao said, I am not willing to marry into the Eastern Palace, but Princess need not force it. The matters of the world have their own heaven's will. Let nature take its course and the heavens will arrange it. Princess Rong Xian smiled instead and said, You are really able to see it clearly. She said, The time is not early, so I will not talk to you anymore. Go over there first and I will let the palace maids send you out. Shen Miao was sent out of the palace by Princess Rong Xian's palace maids, and Jing Zhe and Gu Yu, who were waiting outside, came up to greet her. They first looked at Shen Miao up and down, and after making sure that Shen Miao was safe and sound, they then said, Scared this servant to death. After waiting for such a long time, one thought that something happened. If young lady did not come out, these servants would have thought of ways to go in and search. Shen Miao laughed. It is not a dragon's pool or tiger's den. How would it be so scary? But her heart was secretly thinking about the two assassins that inexplicably appeared today. She did not know whose people they were, to actually dare to kill her in the palace. But if one were to investigate, if she died, it would only be harmful to the crown prince. If the other party did not want to see the crown prince being the only one, then it would be Prince Li's people. It was not possible for Fu Xiu-yi. The matter with Shen Wan and the Crown Prince of Qin had just happened not too long ago, and Fu Xiu-yi would not take the initiative to drill into the heart of the wind and waves. With his forbearing character, he would lurk for a period of time. Thinking about it, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. In short, there was no good person in the Fu family. The Shen family and the Fu family were destined to be on opposite sides. It was either you die or I die. Since the other party was so ruthless, she would not show any mercy. Mo Qing stepped forward and indicated for Shen Miao to board the carriage and return to the Shen mansion. At the side of the street where people were coming and going at the entrance of the palace, there was a lively tavern. In the corner, there were people observing the movements of Mo Qing and his entourage. When he saw that Shen Miao came out of the palace safe and sound, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He then picked up the sword on the table and quietly left. When Shen Miao returned to the Shen mansion, naturally Shen Qiu and the rest surrounded Shen Miao to ask what the Empress said to her in the palace today. Shen Miao skipped over the matter with Xie Jingxing and only said what the Empress said to her. Everyone in the Shen family was once again worried. The imperial family's side was threatened by Shen Miao, and one feared that the days would be shortened by the day. One must think of a solution as soon as possible. Luo Shuiyan then thought of those few people that came to the residence to propose marriage and wanted to ask Shen Miao's opinion. If among these few people, Shen Miao had a slightly better feeling towards any one of them, why not let it be like this first? After all, Shen Xian had inquired about it before. Even though they were not perfect, there were no problems in terms of character. But Shen Miao had just experienced Xie Jingxing's matter today and her mind was in a mess, so how would she have the mood to talk about it? When Luo Shuiyan mentioned it, there was a rare trace of displeasure. When Shen Xian and the rest saw it, they looked at each other and thought that Shen Miao was disturbed by the Empress's words in the palace and it was not good to continue talking. Thus they let Shen Miao rest early in the room and dispersed. Chapter 737. When Shen Miao returned to the room, the sky was already dark. Gu Yu helped her to light the oil lamp. Jing Zhe saw that Shen Miao was in a bad mood today and did not dare to stay in the room to disturb her. She pulled Gu Yu down and closed the door, leaving Shen Miao alone in the room. She was somewhat irritated as she combed her hair, but there seemed to be a nameless anger in her chest that could not be quelled. Thinking of Xie Jingxing's questioning words in the palace today, she could not help but feel even more aggrieved. What did her own matters have to do with Xie Jingxing? Could it be that Xie Jingxing still wanted to interfere in her life? But this marriage had come to this point, with the involvement of various forces and with the addition of Xie Jingxing, she became more and more helpless. Thinking of the words that Pei Lang said, Shen Miao's lips could not help but rise into a smile, but the smile was somewhat miserable. Which female would not want to marry a man who was in love with each other and grow old together? It was just that she was used to seeing the ups and downs of the world in her previous lifetime, and at the end the so-called love between her and Fu Xiu-yi was only her own wishful thinking. She had never really experienced what it was like to be in love with each other. But she knew that once one loved, one's thoughts would not be her own. She was not willing to be like in her previous lifetime, to foolishly hand the happiness of her life into the hands of others. It was very good now. It was much easier to control one's heart from the beginning than to let go of one's heart and then take it back. It was just that her heart was not comfortable. She sat under the lamp for a moment and actually did not think of anything. After a while, she blew out the lamp and climbed onto the couch to sleep. The snowstorm in the residence of Prince Rui was exceptionally big today. A kind of guard stood trembling in the wind, and even that small and sturdy white tiger was thrown outside the room as punishment. Today Prince Rui was not pleasing to the eye with everyone, and everyone in the residence of Prince Rui was punished from top to bottom. Even Ji Yushu and Gao Yang were locked up in the tower prison to face the wall. What kind of place was the tower prison? The people locked up were all vicious criminals, and to deal with these vicious criminals, torture was necessary. As the most cruel place in the MOU army, there were at least 49 types of torture. Many men with strong temperament went to the tower prison and came out after a few days, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. When Tai Yi went in for the first time, he also recuperated on the bed for a long time, and vomited whatever he ate for a month. Ji Yushu and Gao Yang, the two young masters with delicate and tender bodies, entered the tower prison to face the wall. The guards of the residence of Prince Rui secretly shed tears of sympathy for these two. Nightingale quietly poked Nan Chi's arm and asked, "What's wrong with master? Who provoked him?" Nan Chi made a hush sound. Seeing that there was no movement in the bedroom, he then said in a low voice, "Fifth Shen young lady was bestowed a marriage by the palace. Master Gao and young Master Ji did not report it, so master got angry. Shen Yang Nan, Shen Shen Nan, Nan Shen Nan, Nan, was, Nan Nan Nan, Nan. No wonder he was locked up in the tower prison." After he finished speaking, he glanced at the white tiger that was shivering in the cold wind and said sympathetically, "The heavens have taken pity on it. It's been fed well every day, and I thought it was no different from us. I didn't expect that when something happened, everyone would still be used as a punching bag." Huolong flipped her long hair and sighed faintly, anger surging to the crown for a beauty, yeah. In the room, Xie Jingxing handed the completed letter to Tai Yi. Tai Yi took a look and said with some hesitation, "Master, if His Majesty knows about the change of plans at this end." Xie Jingxing glanced at him and Tai Yi immediately shut his mouth and did not speak. It was definitely not a good idea to oppose Zhu Zi's decision when master was in a bad mood. Chapter 738. Xie Jingxing put the other letter into the envelope and said, "What is going on at Pei Lang's side? Think of ways to inquire." He paused for a moment before continuing, "There is also Feng Zixian and Su Ming Feng." His brows slightly wrinkled and suddenly remembered something. "How is the matter with the medicinal herbs?" Tai Yi hurriedly said, "I've already sent someone to look for it. Once it's found, it will be sent to the medical hall immediately." Princess Rong Xian's heart ailment had recently acted up again, and there was a very scarce ingredient in the prescription that was only available in spring. Most of the medical houses in the Ding capital were bought to the princess residence, and these few days Princess Rong Xian did not have any new herbs, thus she could only bear it. Xie Jingxing sent people to secretly search for it with a large sum of money and then, conveniently, sell it to the medical hall. As soon as possible. Xie Jingxing pursed his lips. After thinking for a while, he suddenly stood up, put on his coat, and was about to leave. Tai Yi was stunned. Master still wants to go out? The debt is not settled. Xie Jingxing coldly snorted and left in a huff. It was already quiet outside of the Shen mansion and Shen Miao's boudoir was already dark. It was obvious that she had slept for a long time. When Xie Jingxing arrived, Song Yang was sleeping on the tree and when he saw him coming over, he was so scared that he almost fell down from the tree. She quickly got down and stood up straight to greet Xie Jing. Xie Jingxing looked towards the window and Song Yang quickly said, "Young Furen is already resting." Xie Jingxing walked to the front of the window and saw a jade ring-like thing placed on the windowsill, and below it was a pendant. Xie Jingxing looked at Song Yang with a questioning gaze and Song Yang said, "This is the safety pendant that Luo Ling secretly placed on the windowsill after young Furen had rested." Young Furen had not discovered it. When Xie Jingxing heard it, his eyes slightly moved and he picked up the pendant with the dagger in his sleeve and threw it to Song Yang, "Keep it well." Song Yang was surprised for a moment before he heard Xie Jingxing continue, "The pet at home lacks a pendant." While Song Yang was speechless, Xie Jingxing had already opened the window and went in. On the bed in the room, Shen Miao was sleeping soundly. Xie Jingxing walked to the edge of the cliff and folded his arms as he looked for a while before raising his brows. "To be able to sleep, seems like one did not put my words to heart. You really have big guts." He sat down at the edge of the bed and casually picked up a cup of tea from the table in front of the window to drink before turning his head to look at Shen Miao's sleeping face. When the girl was asleep, she didn't have the usual dignified and calm sense of alienation. She shed all kinds of disguises and revealed her original appearance. Under the moonlight, her features were delicate and tender, which made people remember that she was a 16-year-old girl. They couldn't ignore this fact just because of the situation she was in and the means she had shown. Thinking of how he pinched Shen Miao's chin during the day and how she tried her best to hold back her tears, Xie Jingxing's heart felt a little guilty. He reached out to push the messy hair on Shen Miao's forehead to the back of her ears, but saw that young lady's eyelashes slightly trembling. Xie Jingxing's hand paused as he looked down and saw that the body wrapped in the cup was trembling slightly. He was pretending to be asleep. Xie Jingxing raised his brows and simply sat closer. His hands were on both sides of Shen Miao's body as he leaned over slightly and a magnetic voice sounded in the room. "After helping so many times, why not repay me with your body?" He stared at Shen Miao's eyes and slowly leaned over. Shen Miao's body was extremely stiff and that breathing sound seemed to be at the side of her mouth and the pressure from top to bottom was getting closer. She suddenly pushed Xie Jingxing away and wanted to sit up as she said angrily, "What do you want to do?" There was some panic in her voice. Chapter 739. Xie Jingxing then pressed her back onto the bed. Shen Miao struggled uneasily and Xie Jingxing restrained her movements a few times before saying in amusement, "What do you think I will do to you?" He then looked at her critically, "Dream on." Shen Miao was so angry that she wanted to call Mo Qing in to beat Xie Jingxing up. Because she only wore her inner clothes when she slept at night, after struggling with Xie Jingxing, her inner clothes had slipped off, revealing her snow-white shoulders and one could faintly see the plum blossom dudu. Xie Jingxing was slightly startled when he saw that and Shen Miao discovered where he was looking at. She was extremely angry and was about to scold someone. She saw Xie Jingxing suddenly throw the quilt and covered her head with it. Shen Miao stuck her head out from the quilt and said angrily, "Sick." Xie Jingxing ignored her and quickly wrapped her tightly in the quilt, wrapping her up like a silkworm pupa before pressing her down on the bed. Shen Miao could not move no matter what and Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. Shen Miao finally got tired of struggling and asked, "What are you doing here?" Shen Miao, behave yourself. Xie Jingxing frowned, with this prince here, who would dare to force you to marry? Shen Miao was so angry that she laughed, you will not stay in Ming Qi for thousands or tens of thousands of years. There will be a day that I will marry. You can protect me today, but not tomorrow. You can protect tomorrow, but there will be a day that you cannot protect. If one can protect? Xie Jingxing asked. Shen Miao was startled for a moment and did not speak. Xie Jingxing said, do you not care about marrying or do you want to marry? What does that have to do with you? You ask too much. Shen Miao was still brooding over Xie Jingxing's rudeness in the day and did not intend to talk to him properly. But after thinking about it, how did she look like a person who had become an empress? She was more like those young ladies on the streets. Thinking that she dilly-dallied with this person in front of her for so long, Shen Miao became very dissatisfied with herself. Her temperamental look fell into Xie Jingxing's eyes and Xie Jingxing was very inexplicable. He turned over and pressed Shen Miao under his body. With one hand by Shen Miao's head, he asked softly, who do you want to marry? Luo Ling, Su Ming Feng, Feng Zixian, or Pei Lang? He got closer and his handsome facial features were magnified in front of Shen Miao's eyes under the moonlight. He could smell the fragrant bamboo leaves on the other party's body. His eyes were extremely beautiful, but at this time, they also had an aggressive meaning, as if he wanted to force out people's hearts. Being stared at by such a pair of eyes, it was as if all the hidden thoughts in the bottom of one's heart were exposed. Shen Miao's heart suddenly panicked. This distance was too close, so close that she could hear the thumping of his heartbeat. It was like the beating of a drum, but she couldn't tell if it was hers or Xie Jingxing's. Shen Miao did not want to lose control of her emotions and do something that she did not know about, so she quickly shrank back. Her back was against the bed beam and Xie Jingxing reached out to protect her so that she would not hit her head. This has nothing to do with you. Shen Miao quickly opened her mouth, we only have a relationship of allies. Allies are meant to cooperate with each other. Does Prince Rui still want to manage my lifelong matter? Not to mention marriage, even if I give birth, divorce, or be crippled, it has nothing to do with you at all. Xie Jingxing was rather angry when he heard the first half of her sentence, but when he heard the second half, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. What nonsense is this? Do you really want to be a crippled empress? One did not know how many times he had heard her say it was to be a crippled empress. Xie Jingxing could not understand. Could it be that Shen Miao did not have confidence in herself that she must think of such a miserable ending? Normally she did not look like a person who had an inferiority complex. Shen Miao was so angry that she spoke incoherently, it has nothing to do with you. We are only allies. What right do you have to manage my matters? Xie Jingxing stared at her and it seemed that the anger from her provocation was rising. He was originally a proud person and to be despised by others again and again, there was no need to mention how sullen his heart was. He asked, allies? Shen Miao nodded her head. Allies cannot manage your matters. Shen Miao continued to nod her head. Xie Jingxing said straightforwardly, all right. He quickly leaned over and pecked Shen Miao's lips. Shen Miao was instantly stunned and saw that handsome purple-clad youth speaking in an extremely nasty tone, now we are not allies. You. Shen Miao was unable to speak as her lips seemed to still have that gentle touch of a dragonfly touching the surface of the water. He laughed cynically. So I can take care of your business. Finishing, he stood up from the bed and looked at Shen Miao condescendingly and threatened, remember, in the future to marry, have children, divorce or be crippled, one must have this prince's consent. Finishing, he looked coldly at the windowsill before disappearing in a flash. Outside the room. Song Yang was forced to eavesdrop on the corner of the wall for half a day until his face turned red but he did not dare to leave. When Xie Jingxing came out, Song Yang bowed to him. Xie Jingxing said, in the future when someone sends something over, just throw it away. He took the safety pendant that Song Yang gave him and left with an unhappy face. Chapter 740. This night, someone deliberately messed up a pond of spring water, causing flowers to bloom in the cold winter wind. Naturally, there were people who flew into a rage when their plans fell through. Prince Shou's and Prince Li's residence fell into the same entanglement. That night, someone knocked on Prince Shou's door. Prince Shou thought that it was a servant and called out to enter, but no one entered. Prince Shou got up to open the door and two cold corpses hit him in the face. No one knew how these two corpses ran to the residence of Prince Shou. Prince Shou flew into a rage and heavily reprimanded all the guards on night duty. He then carefully searched the room and suspected that there was a traitor, but at the end there was nothing. The two corpses were also found out to be the assassins that were sent to assassinate Shin Miao today. Prince Shou's heart was uneasy and sent someone to pass a message to Prince Jing that night. Both brothers planned to study the matter. As for Prince Li's side, it was even more violent. Someone directly threw two corpses from the wall into the mansion, which scared the guards of Prince Li's mansion. The guards went out to chase, but they couldn't even find a ghost shadow. Finally they found out that the two corpses were the assassins that Prince Li sent to assassinate Shin Miao. Prince Li was very upset and very uneasy. It was obvious that his assassins were killed and it was equivalent to cutting off his path, so naturally they were his enemies. His enemies in the Ding capital were actually so skilled that the entire residence of Prince Li's guards could not catch one of them, thus Prince Li was very dissatisfied. At the other end, the two brothers, Prince Shou and Prince Jing, were talking. Prince Shou asked, "Who do you think did it?" Prince Jing pondered for a moment. "Perhaps it was Prince Li, that's what I think too." Prince Shou nodded his head. "Perhaps he wanted to use this to threaten me, or perhaps he had the same thoughts as me. But Prince Li had always been amiable on the surface and would not do such a thing." Prince Jing shook his head. "It might be the Crown Prince's doing." "Crown Prince?" Prince Shou paused and nodded his head. "All these years the Crown Prince claimed to be ill. Who knows if it was a smokescreen? None of us had seen his means before. If it was him who caused me and Prince Li to fight, then the Crown Prince would be able to reap the benefits." "That's right." Prince Jing sighed, "But you must not forget about number 9. Forget about old Ninth." Zhou Wang waved his hand carelessly. "Even if Lao Jiu's mouth is noisy, he doesn't have the guts. He doesn't walk around the court much, so how could he have connections? Since he could come to Prince Shou's mansion to make trouble, his subordinate must at least be a master. Don't know why, but I always feel that number 9 is not as simple as he looks." Prince Jing said, "You must not belittle him." In short, Prince Zhou sighed, "This matter is not so simple. Whether it is Prince Li or the Crown Prince, they both came with bad intentions. I'd like to see who's behind this." Prince Jing nodded his head in agreement. Prince Shou and Prince Li naturally did not know that the person who wrote off the assassins sent by them and returned them to the original state was not the Crown Prince or the other party as they guessed, but someone who had nothing to do with them. However, this method of diverting the trouble was really good. The battle between the princes of Ming Qi unknowingly became more and more intense. As time went by, everyone in the Shen family was anxiously looking for a suitable candidate, but the imperial edict of the Ming Qi's imperial family did not come. It was not because of anything else but because Emperor Wen Hui was recently having a headache due to a matter. He asked the Crown Prince beside him, "What is the meaning of the Great Liang? Is it to go against Ming Qi?" Shen had never seen such an arrogant person before. Chapter 741. The Crown Prince also did not dare to speak. Prince Rui of the Great Liang made a trip to the palace and one did not know what he said to Emperor Wen Hui. After Prince Rui left, Emperor Wen Hui flew into a rage and smashed tables and cups, almost flipping the imperial study. The crown prince guessed that he had said something presumptuous, else Emperor Wenhui would not be so angry that he lost his composure. Emperor Wenhui's heart was indeed thundering with rage. He was clearer than anyone else about Ming Qi's current national strength, and it was no longer as strong as when the old emperor was alive. Facing the slightly superior Qin country and the rich and powerful Great Liang, there was nothing to be proud of. In this tribute banquet, to put on such a large country's style, it was just to cover up one's guilty conscience, and to let the Great Liang and Qin country see that Ming Qi still had some ability. It was just that this was a self-deceiving action. Huang Fu Hao of the Qin country treated him with respect on the surface, but in fact he was not that good. Because of Princess Ming En's death, till now he was still holding on to the people from the Supreme Court of Justice, and the Ming Qi's officials were busy redressing the Qin country's princess grievances, and were not afraid of others laughing at them. But Emperor Wenhui did not dare to refuse. After all, he wanted to rope in the Qin country to deal with the Great Liang together. There was no need to talk about the Great Liang. This Prince Rui had his own way of doing things, and Huang Fu Hao at least on the surface respected Emperor Wenhui. Prince Rui however did things his own way, and one could not see any respect for him. Emperor Wenhui kept comforting himself that this Prince Rui's temperament was like this, but one did not expect that yesterday when Prince Rui made a trip to the palace and talked in the imperial study, Emperor Wenhui had the intention to befriend the Great Liang, but was faintly rejected by Prince Rui. Even though he did not say it explicitly, but his attitude did not leave any face for Emperor Wenhui. Emperor Wenhui was after all the ruler of a country, and after losing face, naturally his face did not look good and sunk. Who knew that Prince Rui did not care if he would be angry or not, and casually mentioned the few cities at the border of Ming Qi and the Great Liang, and his words implied that he wanted to take back the cities. Emperor Wenhui's expression immediately changed. Those few cities were not very big, but there were several mines in the cities. The ores that were extracted from those mines could be used to forge large weapons. The city was coincidentally at the border of Ming Qi and the Great Liang. In the past, the Great Liang did not care about these, and the people living in the city were all commoners of Ming Qi. What did these words mean? This meant that the Great Liang wanted to occupy these cities. No matter how muddle-headed Emperor Wenhui was in other matters, he was very sensitive to every inch of land. Great Liang first seized a few cities, who knew what else they would seize afterwards. Now he had his eyes on these few cities, and after a few more days, what would happen if he had his eyes on those cities, and after a few more days, what would happen to the Ding capital? After a few more days, he might as well lead his troops to flatten Ming Qi. With Ming Qi's military strength, it was impossible to contend against the Great Liang. Prince Rui was the envoy that the Great Liang sent over and also represented the intention of the Great Liang's Emperor Yonglu. Prince Rui's seemingly casual words revealed some of the ambitions of the Great Liang. What made Emperor Wenhui's heart cry bitterly was that he knew the other party's ambition, but he did not dare to directly detain Prince Rui, this treacherous person. Because he couldn't withstand Emperor Yongli's rage. If there was an alliance with the Qin country, there would be some confidence, but if it was only Ming Qi alone, he could only endure. There was no dignity at all to be an emperor, and Emperor Wenhui's heart was burning with anger. Who knows what the Great Liang would do next with this ambition? Yuan Shenmiao's marriage is not urgent. Emperor Wenhui said, now Zhen cannot provoke Shen Xian as it is the crucial time. If Shen Xian were to be dissatisfied with Zhen, it would not be good for the Great Liang to take advantage. Chapter 742. When the Crown Prince heard it, he was somewhat disappointed but did not say anything more. He was clear of Emperor Wenhui's temperament, and the more it was at this time, the more one must go along with the other. Thus he said, this son is not in a hurry and naturally prioritized the important matters. One did not think that the Great Liang would have hidden evil intentions. We cannot relax our vigilance against them. Seeing the Crown Prince like this, Emperor Wenhui was very pleased and patted his shoulder. Zhen, no. Do not worry. Even though the great Liang has such ambitions, Zhen will not sit still and wait for death. Tomorrow I will talk to the crown prince about the alliance. The Qin country knows of the great Liang's ambitions and will definitely be nervous. Forming an alliance with Ming Qi is natural, and at that time, there is no need to fear the great Liang. Zhen will then personally issue an edict that the Shin family's military power and the Shin family's girl will be yours. In his words, he treated Shin Miao as an item and was certain that it would fall into his pocket. The crown prince smiled and complied, but his heart was somewhat blaming Prince Rui of the Great Liang for saying these words to Emperor Wenhui at this time. The timing was too coincidental. Prince Ding finally came up with such a brilliant plan for him, but it was thwarted by Prince Rui's words, making the crown prince's heart extremely uncomfortable. But there was nothing he could do. There was news from the palace that Shin Miao and the crown prince's marriage was temporarily suppressed. Even though one did not know what the reason was, Princess Rong Xian was also relieved. That day when she saw Shin Miao in the palace, she let her personal palace maid send Shin Miao out of the palace while she personally went to see Emperor Wenhui. Emperor Wenhui was still polite to Princess Rong Xian, and Princess Rong Xian said that she liked Shin Miao a lot and hoped that Emperor Wenhui would dispel the decision of marrying Shin Miao to the crown prince. Who knew that Emperor Wenhui immediately flew into a rage and even said the words females cannot discuss politics. Princess Rong Xian also had a straightforward temperament and said, "Isn't Shin Miao's marriage a female's marriage? How can it be involved with politics?" She immediately quarreled with Emperor Wenhui, and at the end Emperor Wenhui was angry and invited her out of the palace. That night, Princess Rong Xian's heart ailment acted up again. But it was fortunate that Emperor Wenhui did not suspect why Princess Rong Xian would do that. In the beginning, when Shin Miao met her a few times, it was Princess Rong Xian who saved her. In the eyes of outsiders, they would only feel that Princess Rong Xian and Shin Miao were fated, thus it was reasonable for Princess Rong Xian to treat Shin Miao specially. No one would have thought that the reason why Princess Rong Xian protected Shin Miao was because she was helping Xie Jingxing to look after Shin Miao. That's good. Princess Rong Xian said to Gugu Yang beside her. Ben Gong thought that this time one would not be able to help her and one's heart was very guilty. Now that it has been suppressed for the time being, there will be room to turn things around. This consort can go and give her a reply right now. Otherwise, I won't have the face to face Jing Xing in the afterlife. Gugu Yang hurriedly advised, when the young marquis learns of the princess' painstaking efforts, he will certainly be gratified. As they were talking, they saw someone coming in from outside. The palace maid bowed and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, someone from the medical center has come to deliver medicine." Princess Rong Xian was slightly startled and asked, "Isn't there no more?" She had been suffering from a heart ailment for many years. She had a specific prescription for it, but there was an extremely rare and difficult drug in that prescription. There was only so much in a year, and almost all the medicine in the Ding capital's medical center had entered the princess residence. Originally, when Xie Jingxing was still around, one did not know where he got the means to go out to search for it, thus Princess Rong Xian was not worried at all. Afterwards, when Xie Jingxing died, the medicine in the medical center returned to the previous situation where there was no tomorrow. In winter, the medicine was even harder to find. Princess Rong Xian had been drinking the medicine that lacked the drug for a long time, and a few days ago she said that there was no more drug, but one did not expect that it would be sent over today. Chapter 743. The palace maid said happily, "The physician in the medical shop said that yesterday there was a merchant that came from far away to sell medicine, and coincidentally there was a big basket of that medicine, so the medical shop took it all." Hearing from the physician that it was sufficient to last till next year, it is really a coincidence. Yang Gugu also followed and laughed, "It is really good luck." Princess Rong Xian waved her hands unconcernedly, "Send it to the kitchen." The palace maid quickly complied, and after the palace maid left, Princess Rong Xian then smiled bitterly and sighed. Originally when Jing Xing was around, he would also send one basket of medicine after another. Why is it now a rare luck? Yang Gugu knew that she was thinking of Xie Jing Xing and her heart was sad. Just as she wanted to change the topic, she heard Princess Rong Xian said, "Help me to Xingji courtyard." Yang Gugu was surprised for a moment. Xingji courtyard was a courtyard in the princess residence. At the beginning, after Princess Yu Qing passed away, Princess Rong Xian was angry at Xie Ding's actions and brought Xie Jing Xing to stay in the princess residence for a period of time. Xie Jing Xing was born as white as jade, so Princess Rong Xian specially ordered people to make a courtyard for him, which was Xingji courtyard. Afterwards Xie Ding brought Xie Jing Xing back and Princess Rong Xian did not allow anyone to tear down Xingji courtyard. After Xie Jing Xing grew up, he would occasionally come to the princess residence to stay for a few days and rest in Xingji courtyard. It was just that ever since Xie Jing Xing died in battle 2 years ago, Princess Rong Xian ordered people to seal up Xingji courtyard, and other than the daily cleaning, no one was allowed to enter. She was also afraid of seeing things and never stepped into Xingji courtyard, but today for the first time in 2 years, she wanted to go to Xingji courtyard to take a look. Yang Gugu did not dare to disobey Princess Rong Xian's orders and was somewhat worried as she supported Princess Rong Xian to Xingji courtyard. Princess Rong Xian said, "One do not know why these few days, one keep dreaming of Jing Xing." As she spoke, her expression became strange. Yang Gugu was somewhat puzzled when she saw it. Princess Rong Xian's heart was somewhat uneasy. These few days, she had a dream every night and dreamt of a purple-clad youth with half a silver mask on his face. She did not know who it was, so she reached out to remove the other person's mask. That person had the same face as Xie Jing Xing but called her Princess Rong Xian. It was the voice of Prince Rui of the Great Liang. Every time Princess Rong Xian woke up from her dreams, she would feel that her back was drenched in sweat. She was thinking, could it be that that day when she saw Shen Miao and Prince Rui's entanglement, because of the other party's little words, Xie Jing Xing and Prince Rui were mixed together, to the extent that he was possessed at night? The more she thought about it, the more she missed Xie Jing Xing and thought of going to the Xingji courtyard to take a look. While Zhang Xian was deep in thought, he had already arrived at the Xingji courtyard. The guards outside the courtyard were somewhat surprised to see her. Princess Rong Xian had not stepped in here for 2 years and did not allow others to enter. The guards opened the way and Princess Rong Xian and Yang Gugu walked in. The furnishings in the house were exactly the same as 2 years ago. Because it was cleaned every day, not a speck of dust fell. It looked brand new and clean as if it was yesterday. It made Princess Rong Xian in a trance that when she turned around, she would be able to see that handsome and beautiful youth lying on the bed with his legs crossed, casually eating an apple. On the shelf were all the little toys that Xie Jing Xing liked to play with since young, and on the chair were Xie Jing Xing's old clothes. Princess Rong Xian walked to the side of the clothes and picked it up. She reached out to touch the lines on it and reminisced, it is exactly the same as before. Yang Gugu did not know what to say and was afraid that Princess Rong Xian would sink into the memories of the past and be sad. She said, the golden thread on it is still brand new. Princess Rong Xian laughed, Jing Xing, this child has many rules. When he was young, one made colorful clothes for him but he was not willing to wear them. He just liked purple. Ben Gong disdained that purple was old and heavy and not suitable for a child to wear. One wanted to embroider flowers on it but he despised it very much. Afterwards it was the embroidery lady in the palace who used golden thread to embroider dark lines on the edges of the robes before he was willing to wear it. Want to be gorgeous but do not want to wear it on the body. There are many crafty ideas. Chapter 744. Yang Gugu also followed and laughed, little Marquis is noble in gold and precious in jade. Only little Marquis would look good when wearing it. When His Highness brought little Marquis into the palace, Others thought that he was a prince. That appearance was like one of the imperial family's people. Even Yu Qing did not have this kind of bearing at the beginning. Princess Rong Xian also laughed along as she caressed the golden embroidered patterns on the corner of the robe. But as she laughed and laughed, she could not laugh anymore. Her expression gradually became serious. Just like what she and Gugu had said, Xie Jingxing was very picky about his clothes and loved to wear purple. He liked to wear gorgeous but did not want to be too ostentatious and must use dark golden threads to embroider patterns on the corner of the robe. Because his requirements were high, the threads were very fine and the patterns were very special. But that day in the palace, Prince Rui, who was pulling Shen Miao, was wearing a purple gold robe and was pulling Shen Miao's hands upwards. The gold thread on his sleeves was exactly the same as what Xie Jingxing used to wear. Princess Rong Xian's health was not good but her eyes were not blind. That day when she saw Prince Rui and heard Shen Miao calling Prince Rui Xie Jingxing, there was a moment when she thought that Prince Rui was Xie Jingxing. But afterwards when she saw Prince Rui's demeanor and temperament, it was very unfamiliar, and after listening to Prince Rui's explanation, she dispelled this thought. But she always felt that something was not right, and after returning to the princess residence, she frequently thought of Xie Jingxing and Prince Rui. She had always thought that the reason why she was brooding over it was because Prince Rui and Xie Jingxing's words were exactly the same, but now it was clear in a flash that it had nothing to do with the name, but it was because she saw the corner of the other person's sleeves. After interacting with Xie Jingxing for more than 10 years, Princess Rong Xian treated Xie Jingxing as her own child, and a mother would always be especially concerned about the child's matters, even if it was a small matter. She could clearly remember the pattern on the sleeves, but after Xie Jingxing's death, she had not seen this pattern for 2 years and could not remember it for a moment. But today she remembered that it was exactly the same pattern as Prince Rui. Some things were faded in the dark. Sometimes, all that was needed was a primer, just like stringing all the scattered beads together, and everything would have an answer. The same love to wear purple, the same pattern on the sleeves, the same name, Jingxing, and the same had a special relationship with Shen Miao. Princess Rong Xian suddenly remembered that basket of medicine. Why didn't he have it before? Why did he have it today? Was it because a few days ago she had a heart disease in front of Prince Rui, and in just a few days there were merchants that came from far away to sell medicinal herbs? If there were too many coincidences, it wouldn't be a coincidence anymore. Once the seed of doubt sprouted, there was no way it could grow back. It quickly sprouted branches in its heart and quickly grew into a towering tree, until it took root in the soil and stood there unshakably. Thinking about it now, at such a young age, Xie Jingxing had an indescribable air of nobility. One thought that it was because of his good upbringing but did not know that perhaps it was because of the difference in blood. Even though his temperament and figure had changed, there were some things that could not be changed. For example, some small habits, such as the connection between family members. Princess Rong Xian suddenly squatted down and pressed on her chest. Yang Gugu jumped in shock as she saw Princess Rong Xian's pale face, and large beads of sweat started to form on her forehead. He hastily shouted, "Guards! Call the doctor. The princess' heart disease is acting up again." A hand suddenly grabbed Yang Gugu's hand. Princess Rong Xian's face was in pain, but her tone was very determined. "Help me back to the study and bring an invitation over. She must personally verify one thing." Chapter 745. When Shen Miao woke up, Luo Shuiyan happily told her that her marriage with the crown prince was temporarily suppressed in the palace. It was related to Prince Rui that Shen Xian got through the palace. One heard that when Prince Rui and Emperor Wen Hui were chatting, they inadvertently mentioned the few cities at the border. Emperor Wen Hui was worried that the great Liang did not have good intentions, and at this critical juncture, he wanted to rope in Shen Xian, this strong general. Thus he would not mention Shen Miao's marriage for the time being. Luo Shuiyan said, Prince Rui's arrival is coincidental, but it has solved Jiao Jiao's urgent problem. With more time, we can slowly pick out suitable talents for Jiao Jiao. Luo Shuiyan's words were unintentional, but Shen Miao listened attentively. Naturally, she knew that Prince Rui did not, unintentionally, mention the matter of the cities and provoked Emperor Wenhui to change his mind. At the same time that she breathed a sigh of relief, Shen Miao could not help but be secretly shocked by Xie Jingxing's methods. Xie Jingxing's methods could not be said to be brilliant, but it was very effective. Just a few words were able to provoke the emperor to hesitate and not dare to take action. The crown prince's marriage was ruined and Prince Ding's plans were ruined. It was really satisfying to shoot several eagles with one arrow. Previously, when Xie Jingxing mentioned this matter, he did not seem to care about it, but he actually had this ability. Thinking about it, Shen Miao felt somewhat indignant in her heart. The dangerous situation that she found difficult was easily resolved in Xie Jingxing's hands, which made her seem incompetent. Her mind could not help but think of Xie Jingxing's frivolous actions that night and could not wait to beat Xie Jingxing up. Luo Tan said, youngest Biao's sister, why are you clutching this book so tightly for? The pages are about to break. Shen Miao then recovered to her senses and quickly released her hands. She was somewhat embarrassed as recently when she thought of Xie Jingxing, her emotions were somewhat out of control. It was all because the other party's actions were too unexpected that only she was brooding over it. Luo Tan held her chin with both hands and looked at her mischievously. Hey, are you thinking that Brother Ling, young Master Su, and Big Brother Feng are all very good and you can't decide which one to choose? Shen Miao said, thinking too much. Luo Tan still wanted to say something when she saw Luo Ling walking in from outside. Luo Tan stuck out her tongue and called out, older brother Ling. Luo Ling smiled, what are you all talking about? We're talking about my cousin's marriage. Luo Tan said loudly, youngest Biao's sister has not decided who to marry yet. I came over to inquire about the news. Shen Miao felt helpless in her heart. Could Luo Tan have a little bit of a female's tactfulness and say it out loud? It was fortunate that Shen Miao was someone who had seen the world. If it was an ordinary female, one would be embarrassed to death. Shen Miao did not have any reaction, but Luo Ling was somewhat embarrassed. He covered his mouth with his hand and coughed twice. Looking around, he asked, younger cousin, do you like the safety pendant? Pendant of safety? Shen Miao frowned and asked, what pendant of safety? Luo Ling was surprised for a moment and said, it was me yesterday. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by the servants outside. After speaking, Luo Shuiyan asked Shen Miao to go to the front hall. Luo Ling swallowed the words in his mouth and smiled to let Shen Miao go first. Shen Miao smiled apologetically at him and said, I will speak to older brother Ling later. When one reached the front hall, one then knew that it was the people from the princess residence that came to the Shen mansion. It was said that Princess Rong Xian had sent an invitation to Shen Miao, asking Shen Miao to make a trip to the princess residence. Princess Rong Xian had saved Shen Miao several times and Shen Xian and wife were very grateful to her, thus there was no reason to refuse. Shen Miao was even more unable to say anything. She received the invitation with a smile, but her heart was unusually heavy. If it was in the past when Princess Rong Xian sent an invitation to Shen Miao would not hesitate to accept it. In all fairness, Princess Rong Xian treated her well, and because of her relationship with Xie Jingxing, she took care of her. When she knew that Emperor Wenhui had the intention to introduce Shen Miao to the crown prince, she still wanted to speak up for Shen Miao, thus Shen Miao's heart was grateful. But Princess Rong Xian just had to send an invitation at this time. If it was about the matter of the crown prince, she would have directly sent someone to say it. To send an invitation to the princess residence, it was obvious that she wanted to discuss some matters face to face. But what matter was so important? Princess Rong Xian, who was so important that she did not see anyone, would take the initiative to invite Shen Miao to the princess residence. Shen Miao could not help but think of that day in the palace when she and Xie Jingxing were involved and were seen by Princess Rong Xian. At that time she called out Xie Jingxing's name and was later deceived by Xie Jingxing, but her heart felt uneasy. If it was a person who understood and loved deeply, no matter what the other party had become, there would always be some old traces to follow. Shen Miao's intuition had always been very accurate. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian would be able to hide safely. It was just that this guess was too scary and the consequences were unpredictable, so she did not want to think too deeply about it. But escaping was not a solution as trouble came to the door. Shen Miao felt that Princess Rong Xian might have found some suspicious points, but she was unable to reject this invitation because to reject was to admit it. Chapter 746. Princess Rong Xian's invitation was sent to Shen Miao on the afternoon of the second day. Luo Shuayan also let Shen Xian prepare a bunch of gifts for Shen Miao to bring to the princess residence. Because Princess Rong Xian had helped Shen Miao a lot, Luo Shuayan wanted to express her gratitude to Princess Rong Xian. In order to prevent any accidents on the road, Shen Qiu brought along many guards and A Qi and Mo Qing also followed. Even so, throughout the journey, Shen Miao's expression could not be said to be relaxed. When Jingzhe and Gu Yu saw this, they thought that Shen Miao was worried about the safety of the journey and comforted her for a long time. In the carriage, Shen Miao kept thinking about how to deal with Princess Rong Xian's words upon reaching the princess residence. If Princess Rong Xian were to ask about Xie Jingxing's matter, it would dispel the other's suspicions. But Princess Rong Xian was a very cautious person and once suspicions were raised, it would be very difficult to eliminate it. Shen Miao felt a headache coming on. Jingzhe smiled, "What is young lady thinking about to be so serious?" This servant had not seen young lady like this for a long time. Shen Miao was slightly startled and was somewhat astonished in her heart. That's right, ever since she was reborn, she relied on the fact that she knew the path of her previous life, and her journey had been exceptionally smooth. Because of Luo Shuayan, Shen Xian and Shen Qiu's matter, it was not particularly difficult to handle. As for other people, she would care about those that had benefits for her, like Lu Ying and Pei Lang, but what did other people's matters have to do with her? She was now racking her brains to think of an excuse for Xie Jingxing, but what was the relationship between Xie Jingxing and her? Was it necessary to treat him with such devotion? Shen Miao was somewhat annoyed with herself and she also understood that she had a temperament that liked to get stuck in a dead end. There was a voice in his heart that said that this was all Xie Jingxing's own trouble and should be solved by Xie Jingxing himself. The other voice could not bear for Xie Jingxing to deal with this troublesome matter alone. After all, to let Xie Jingxing reappear in front of Princess Rong Xian with an additional identity of Prince Rui of the Great Liang, no matter if it was Princess Rong Xian or Xie Jingxing, it was too cruel. Unknowingly, before Shen Miao could think of a countermeasure, the horse carriage had already arrived at the entrance of the princess residence. Almost all the servants in the princess residence had an impression of Shen Miao, so naturally they respectfully welcomed her in. Shen Miao let Mo Qing and the rest stay at the residence's entrance to help move the gifts for Princess Rong Xian to the storeroom. The palace maid brought Shen Miao inside. But he directly brought her to Princess Rong Xian's bedroom. Even though Princess Rong Xian's figure was not commonly seen in court and was usually very low-key. But the princess residence was after all spacious and grand. It was just that after the Fuma's death, Princess Rong Xian was widowed and did not care much about these worldly possessions. Therefore, the bedroom was simple and clean. The moment one entered, it felt a little cold and cheerless. Princess Rong Xian was drinking the sweet soup that was sent from the kitchen, and upon seeing Shen Miao arrive, she instructed the servants to scoop a bowl for Shen Miao. She smiled and said, "This is the new chef. He's very good at making desserts and sweet soups. I don't know if you'll be used to them. This palace's food is better than the ones in the palace. You should try it too." Shen Miao thanked Princess Rong Xian and picked up the bowl to taste. She did not really like sweets, but because of Princess Rong Xian, she could not refuse. As she was eating, she was observing Princess Rong Xian's expression. Princess Rong Xian's complexion was much better compared to the day they met in the palace. Her face was much rosier and her mood seemed to be not bad as there was a smile on her face. Shen Miao said, "Princess's health seems to be much better." The medical hall had recently received a rare medicinal herb and the kitchen had been decocting it for Ben Gong to drink. It would be difficult for Ben Gong's health to not be good. Princess Rong Xian sighed, "It is really luck." In the past it was not easy to find this medicinal herb, but one did not expect to encounter it at this time. There was a bit of surprise in her tone. Chapter 747. Shen Miao followed Princess Rong Xian's words but her heart felt somewhat strange. Princess Rong Xian was not such a trivial person and even if they were to chat, it would be interesting and insightful matters. This was her own matter, so there was no need to specially mention it to her. But Shen Miao was unable to understand the meaning of these words. She originally thought that Princess Rong Xian would ask about Xie Jingxing's matter today, but one did not expect that Princess Rong Xian did not mention it at all and seemed like she did not intend to mention it. Instead, she changed the topic and talked about how Emperor Wen Hui suppressed Shen Miao's marriage a few days ago. Imperial older brother had always been stubborn and seemed to want you to be his daughter-in-law, even though Ben Gong felt that it was not appropriate. But that day after you left, Ben Gong personally pleaded with Imperial older brother and wanted him to dispel this idea, but Imperial older brother did not agree. Afterwards it was all thanks to Prince Rui's blessings. She looked at Shen Miao and smiled. "One think that General Shen had already inquired about the reason and told you about it." Shen Miao nodded her head and her heart secretly became alert. Even though these words are somewhat disgraceful, Ben Gong also do not hope that the great Liang would have any ambitions towards Ming Qi. But one have to thank Prince Rui. If it was not for his words, Imperial older brother would not have changed his mind. One fear that your marriage would not be suppressed like now. Shen Miao remained silent as the more she spoke at this time, the more mistakes she would make. But she did not expect that Princess Rong Xian would suddenly pull her hand and said with a smile, "Previously Ben Gong saw that your relationship with Prince Rui of the Great Liang was not shallow. Ben Gong is after all older than you and have eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. It is also the same when looking at people. Prince Rui's identity is special and Ben Gong thought that you are young and would inevitably be deceived. One did not think that he would be a loyal person and this time he opened his mouth at this juncture. Ben Gong thought that it would be somewhat forced to say that it was intentional." Princess Rong Xian did not have such an attitude towards Prince Rui previously and the difference was so big. Shen Miao became more cautious but there was no trace of panic on her face. She only smiled gently and replied, "Prince Rui is a dragon and phoenix among men and this official's daughter is a floating weed. Naturally one cannot be compared. This official's daughter is also not so arrogant to think that Prince Rui would speak up for this official's daughter." This was tactfully denying the matter of having a close relationship with Prince Rui. "Ben Gong know that you are shy. Princess Rong Xian was especially stubborn today, Ben Gong will not say it out." Shen Miao still wanted to speak but Princess Rong Xian turned her head to talk about other matters. Princess Rong Xian was especially excited today and pulled Shen Miao to talk for a long time. Just like when Prince Rui was mentioned just now, Shen Miao thought that Princess Rong Xian would continue to inquire but Princess Rong Xian turned her head and asked if Luo Shuiyan had any suitable young talents that Shen Miao could see. From noon till night fell, Princess Rong Xian did not have the slightest intention to end today's conversation and send Shen Miao back to the residence. Shen Miao was also somewhat unable to grasp Princess Rong Xian's meaning. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu on the other hand wanted Shen Miao to return earlier, as it was not easy to travel in the dark and the carriage could not be seen clearly. But this was the princess residence. The princess did not speak and Shen Miao did not speak, so how could it be the two of them who spoke? When the last pot of tea was finished, Princess Rong Xian stood up and Jing Zhe and Gu Yu's heart was slightly relieved. Thinking that it was rare for Princess Rong Xian to be in such high spirits today, it was not easy for them to return to the Shen mansion. Who knew that Princess Rong Xian affectionately pulled Shen Miao's hands and said with a smile, "Accompany me to the courtyard for a stroll." Jing Zhe and Gu Yu's jaws dropped. This was the princess residence and Princess Rong Xian had lived here for so many years. She would stroll around her own courtyard every day, but for no rhyme or reason when Shen Miao came over as a guest, she let others stroll around the courtyard. Moreover, it was so dark and it was very cold outside, so one was not afraid of catching a cold when strolling around the courtyard. Did all the princesses of the imperial family have this kind of quirk? Chapter 748. However, Shen Miao understood. It was obvious that Princess Rong Xian had ulterior motives and invited Shen Miao to the princess residence today. It was not just to have Shen Miao accompany her to chat. Princess Rong Xian definitely had her own plans. But Shen Miao could not refuse. She said, "All right." Out of Jing Zhe's and Gu Yu's expectations, the courtyard that Princess Rong Xian brought Shen Miao to stroll around was actually a side courtyard. In the dark of the night, there were no lanterns at the door and one could not see clearly what was written on the signboard. Princess Rong Xian pulled Shen Miao into the room and smiled. "This courtyard is called Xingji Courtyard." Shen Miao's heart thumped and knew what Princess Rong Xian was going to say next. Sure enough, when Princess Rong Xian entered the room, her hands fondled the little things on the shelf with nostalgia and said with a smile, "This is where Jing Xing lived." Jing Zhe and Gu Yu followed behind and were somewhat surprised when they heard it. The place where the little marquis of the Xie family stayed. Jing Xing did not have a mother since he was young, and after Yu Qing left, Ben Gong pitied him for having such a rough life at such a young age and hated the Marquis of Linan for not staying at home, causing the inner courtyard to catch fire. Yu Qing's life was bitter. Even before her death, she still had to be called a jealous woman. However, at that time, Madame Fang took advantage of a loophole and could not openly deal with her. Otherwise, Yu Qing would be cursed in the underworld. At that time, Ben Gong was angry but also afraid that Fang Shi would use some other sinister method, so Ben Gong took Jing Xing back to the Princess Fu to raise him. Jing Xing has always been mischievous and is very close to me. I don't have a son of my own, so I thought that it wouldn't be a bad idea to keep Jing Xing by my side. Later, I built the Xingji courtyard for Jing Xing here. When Princess Rong Xian talked about these matters, she sighed. With her description, Shen Miao seemed to be able to see the appearance of a baby in swaddling clothes crying piteously for food. Shen Miao was fortunate that her parents were healthy and loved her very much. Even though they were estranged due to the instigation of the second and third household of the Shen family, it could still be remedied. But Xie Jingxing did not have a mother since he was born. In other words, when he was born, in Ming Qi's fake identity, he played a pitiful role and did not have a smooth journey. Jing Xing was raised very well by Ben Gong here. The Marquis of Linan came over several times to ask for him, and even from Imperial older brother's side, Ben Gong still did not appreciate it. But afterwards Madame Fang gave birth to 2 sons, thus Ben Gong returned Jing Xing. Princess Rong Xian turned and looked at Shen Miao. "Do you know why?" Shen Miao thought for a moment and said, "Because little Xie Marquis is the son of the residence of the Marquis of Linan, thus the residence of the Marquis of Linan should be inherited by him. If the little Marquis were to stay in the princess residence, Madame Fang and the 2 Shu brothers of the Xie family would take advantage of it. Perhaps the position of the Marquis of Linan would fall into the hands of the 2 brothers in the future." Princess Rong Xian smiled when she heard it. "Ben Gong already knew that you are a penetrating person. When I was at your age, it was impossible for me to think of this." Shen Miao smiled and declined to comment. Naturally, a young lady who had never given birth to a child would naturally not plan for the child, so how would she look at it for a long time? But she was a woman who had given birth to 2 children. If it was Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she would also let them go back. It was something that belonged to one's child, so how could it be taken advantage of by others? Even though Jing Xing had returned, but his relationship with Ben Gong is very good. It is said that blood is thicker than water. Ben Gong is afraid that after he and the Marquis of Linan get along, he would be provoked by vile people and would have complaints against Ben Gong and Yu Qing. But what made Ben Gong surprised and gratified was that his relationship with the Marquis of Linan was not that good. No matter how the Marquis of Linan fawned on him, he would not be salty nor indifferent. Sometimes Ben Gong thought that he and the Marquis of Linan did not look like a pair of father and son, so how would there be the saying that blood is thicker than water? Chapter 749. Shen Miao's heart became heavy. The meaning in Princess Rong Xian's words was just too strong. Princess Rong Xian picked up a small mirror on the shelf and said, "Actually it is not that the Marquis of Linan does not look like a pair of father and son, and also not like Yu Qing. The Marquis of Linan is a muddle-headed person but is somewhat indecisive and would not be clear on some matters, else he would not be schemed against by Madame Fang, that little slut. Yu Qing is a silly one who wholeheartedly threw herself onto a man and at the end was secretly hurt and even lost her life, letting her own child suffer for no reason." Jing Xing's temperament was different from the both of them. Jing Xing looked unbearably stubborn but was extremely decisive in doing things. Once he obtained a sword that was valued by his good friend. His good friend did not say anything but he saw it in his eyes. Afterwards he said that he fancied his friend's mirror and used his own sword to exchange. Ben Gong asked him, he obviously did not like that mirror, so why did he lie? But he told Ben Gong that it was because he also did not like that sword. He seemed to be very clear on what he wanted and what he did not want from a very young age. He would not even take a glance at things that he did not want and would firmly hold on to the things that he wanted from the start. He always smiled and was very likable to young ladies, but he did not have any special expression to any young lady. He was actually more indifferent than anyone else. Princess Rong Xian stared at Shen Miao and for a moment, Shen Miao felt that Princess Rong Xian and Xia Jingxing were somewhat similar in some aspects, especially when they stared sharply at one, as if they could see through one's soul. That kind of oppressive feeling was once again displayed from this imperial princess who was no longer young. She opened her mouth and said, Ben Gong thought that perhaps the Marquis of Linan was something that he did not need in his eyes, so from the start he did not have any kinship with the Marquis of Linan. Ben Gong always thought that Ben Gong was a person that he wanted to firmly hold on to, but now it seems that Ben Gong was wrong. Ben Gong was also a person that he did not need, right? That sentence of, "Is it right?" was directed at Shen Miao. Jing Zhe and Guyu had already been pulled out by Princess Rong Xian's personal female official, Yang Gugu, and there was no one else in the room. Shen Miao quietly listened and said, "Little Marquis has placed the princess in his heart." Shen Miao, Ben Gong know that you are exceptionally intelligent and good at guessing people's hearts. Therefore, there's no need to coax this consort. Princess Rong Xian sneered, if one really put Ben Gong in one's heart, then why would one deceive Ben Gong with the news of fake death? Also, why would one see Ben Gong unable to sleep and feel uneasy after learning of his death? It was obvious that everything had been arranged from the start, but one wanted to deceive Ben Gong's trust and sincerity. It was obviously right in front of one's eyes, but one refused to acknowledge it and used a clumsy excuse. Shen Miao, tell Ben Gong, are you putting Ben Gong in your heart? When he said the last sentence, his tone suddenly became sharp, almost with a hint of anger. Shen Miao's heart sank. In the end, he still knew. But she still could not admit it. There were many things that could not be said even if one knew what the outcome would be. Even if the evidence was conclusive, he couldn't say it. Princess Rong Xian was the princess of Ming Qi and Xia Jingxing was Prince Rui of the Great Liang. Once this news was confirmed and she personally said it out, Shen Miao was unable to confirm what kind of change it would bring to the situation and how much trouble it would bring to Xia Jingxing. It was impossible for her to admit it so rashly. Even if Princess Rong Xian had already decided in her heart. She said, this official's daughter does not understand what the princess is saying. Princess Rong Xian looked at her with contempt. The previous kindness and gentleness had disappeared, and what replaced it was a condescending look that could easily pinch an ant to death. That was the most common expression of the Fu family, and Shen Miao could see it every day. She suddenly felt a sense of disgust in her heart. It was not disgust at Princess Rong Xian, but most likely she disgust at the blood of the Fu family that flowed in Princess Rong Xian's bones, causing them to have some similarities in some aspects. Princess Rong Xian said, "Do you know what is the crime of deceiving the imperial family?" Chapter 750. The crime of deceiving the ruler. Shen Miao answered. Colluding with the enemy to commit treason, the crime of deceiving the monarch, these 8 words are enough to have your entire Shen family beheaded and 9 generations executed. I'm sure you've seen what happened to Shen Wan. Do you know what you're saying right now? Do you know what kind of lies you're telling me? Shen Miao said, this official's daughter did not say anything. You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. Princess Rong Xian's voice was filled with bone-chilling coldness. If Ben Gong wants you to die, it is an easy matter. If your answer today is not satisfactory to Ben Gong only need to mention it to Imperial older brother, and what awaits your Shen family will be a disaster. Are you going to let your parents and brothers pay with their lives because of your willfulness? Shen Miao remained silent. Princess Rong Xian slowly said, now tell Ben Gong that Prince Rui is the Xie Jingxing who died in battle, right? No. The 2 firm words came out of Shen Miao's mouth without wavering. It was as if those terrifying threats from before were nothing but smoke and clouds, never leaving a trace in her heart. Shen Miao. Princess Rong Xian was furious. Ben Gong will let the Shen family be punished. You need evidence for everything. As long as I'm willing, I don't need evidence to punish you. Shen Miao almost sneered in her heart. The Fu family was just like this, so overbearing and domineering. Even if it was Princess Rong Xian who looked to be the most impartial, when faced with the matters that one wanted to know, one would not hesitate to use the imperial power to bully and humiliate. Humans are complicated, and humans are selfish. This princess will ask you again. Is Prince Rui Xie Jingxing? No. Princess Rong Xian almost flew into a rage. Normally she admired Shen Miao's calm and collected manner, but when this calm and collected manner was used to deal with her, Princess Rong Xian felt that she was facing a copper pea that one could not find any flaws. Normal young ladies would be scared with just a few threatening words, but Shen Miao was not afraid. Someone come. Princess Rong Xian's face sank. Give Shen Miao to me. Before she could finish, the rest of her words were swallowed back into her throat. A purple figure leaped in from outside the window. He had leaped in from the back window. There was no one guarding the backyard, so no one saw him. That person was wearing a dark purple brocade robe, and the golden thread at the corner of the robe was embroidered with a design that Princess Rong Xian was most familiar with. After he entered the room, he looked around unhurriedly and strolled over to Shen Miao. As if he was in his own residence, he stood still in front of Princess Rong Xian. Only then did she say lazily and unhurriedly, she's timid, Aunt Rong, don't scare her. When Princess Rong Xian saw this person, she kept quiet and stood blankly at the same spot. When she heard the words Rong Yi, she pointed at the other person and trembled so much that she could not speak. In this not very spacious room, the lights swayed slightly. That person played with the thumb ring on her thumb. She wore a half-silver mask. The mask glowed with a cold light, revealing her red lips with a slight smile. However, it did not make people feel warm at all. Shen Miao stared at Xie Jingxing in disbelief. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing would dare to appear at this time and openly appear in the princess residence in front of Princess Rong Xian. One had to know that Xie Jingxing had died in the battlefield of the northern Jiang 2 years ago. If Xie Jingxing were to appear again, not to mention what kind of uproar it would cause in Ming Qi, but if one were to add on the identity of Prince Rui, spy, all kinds of infamy would be inevitable. How dare he? Chapter 751. Princess Rong Xian trembled as she pointed at him and asked, "What did you call Bengong?" The purple-clad youth in the room had a tall and slender figure as he slowly reached out to touch his mask. When the mask was taken off, one was able to see his outstanding facial features. Unparalleled beauty, beautiful bones and pine trees. That pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes that always had a bit of brilliance in them were full of amorous smiles, but the smile on his lips had a hint of ridicule. As a result, his flirtatious appearance was covered up, and a bit of indifference and pride slowly appeared on his face. An unfamiliar Xie Jingxing, a young man who was completely different from that dazzling handsome youth, but one could still see the shadow of the arrogance of a youth. It was just that now that arrogance was slowly suppressed and what replaced it was a kind of dangerous and terrifying sharpness. He put the mask back on but spoke casually and somewhat lazily, "Trust that you have been well, Aunt Rong." Princess Rong Xian was startled for a long time and seemed to have recovered from the shock just now. She looked at Xie Jingxing and sized him up with a kind of unfamiliar gaze and said in an unclear tone, "Should Ben Gong call you Prince Rui or Xie Jingxing?" The alienation and defensiveness in those words made Shen Miao unable to help but be shocked. She had also thought about what kind of scene it would be if Xie Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian really bumped into each other, but did not think that it would be like this. The familial affection in the past was a scam and a joke, but Princess Rong Xian showed such hostility in this short period of time, which was really surprising. Xie Jingxing said, "Princess can do as you please." "Did you send the medicine?" Princess Rong Xian asked. Xie Jingxing smiled but did not speak. Princess Rong Xian also smiled. Ben Gong would not dare to accept Prince Rui's things in vain. One think that the price of these medicinal herbs is not low. Later Ben Gong will let people send the money to the residence of Prince Rui. "Many thanks Prince Rui." "No need," Xie Jingxing said. "Prince Rui came here for." Princess Rong Xian's voice was polite and vigilant. It was not like she was facing a son who had come back from the dead. That was a tone that was completely facing a stranger and could even be said to be an enemy. "She does not know anything." Xie Jingxing pointed his chin at Shen Miao and said, "If the princess has any doubts, one can directly ask me. There is no need to make things difficult for her." "How would I dare to make things difficult for her?" Princess Rong Xian sneered, but her tone was somewhat complicated. "It is good that it is not difficult." Xie Jingxing walked over and put his arm around Shen Miao's shoulders. He did not care about Shen Miao's expression and said, "Today's matter, this prince will personally visit another day to explain. If the princess has any dissatisfaction or misunderstanding towards this prince, there is no need to implicate others." His lips hooked up into a smile. "Prince Rui's residence awaits any time." Finishing, he did not care about Princess Rong Xian's reaction and walked forward a few steps and walked out the window. Shen Miao was shocked by Xie Jingxing's actions today as she did not have any reaction when she was taken out of the princess residence. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing would dare to appear in the princess residence so brazenly. To reveal his identity to Princess Rong Xian, even though Xie Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian were like mother and son, but that was in the past. Xie Jingxing was now a great Liang person and the difference in identity between countries would cause many things to change. Especially when they were in such a delicate position. For example, when Princess Rong Xian saw Xie Jingxing today, Shen Miao thought that Princess Rong Xian would be hysterical and would question angrily or cry in pain. However, Princess Rong Xian's first reaction was to be on guard. Her sarcasm, quiet, probing, courteous, and did not make things difficult. With such restrained emotions, what was revealed was a fact. In front of Xie Jingxing, who had come back from the dead, Princess Rong Xian was more suspicious than happy. Princess Rong Xian's words floated in Shen Miao's ears. He seemed to be very clear about what he wanted and what he did not want from a very young age. He would not even take a glance at the things he did not want and would firmly hold on to the things he wanted from the start. He always smiled and was very likable to young ladies, but he did not have any special expression to any young lady. He was actually more indifferent than anyone else. Was it that Xie Jingxing knew from young that there would be such a day, so he attributed the kinship to the do not want part? It was not that he did not want but that he could not afford it. Because even if he wanted it, there would be a day when he would lose it. Loved ones would become enemies and the once loving eyes would become on guard. Since it was so, it was better to be a stranger from the start. When there was no closeness, there would not be a moment of disappointment. Shen Miao's heart suddenly had a bad taste. Chapter 752. The wind at night was really cold and Xie Jingxing only brought Shen Miao to the outside of the princess residence as the Shen family's carriage was still waiting outside. Shen Miao still wanted to speak but Xie Jingxing's shadow had disappeared from her side. It was Mo Qing and Qi who were somewhat surprised to see her suddenly appear at the residence's doors. Qi asked, "Why did Miss come out alone? Where are the others?" Just as they were speaking, Jingzhe and Guyu ran out panting and after seeing Shen Miao, they also gave a sigh of relief. Jingzhe said, "These servants were waiting outside. Yang Gugu said that you have come out and this servant thought that she was lying. Later, when I saw that there was no one in the room, I came over to take a look. I didn't expect Miss to really come out." She looked left and right again and was confused. "But there is obviously only one room. We guards outside and didn't see when Miss came out. Could it be that there is a secret passage in the princess mansion?" Guyu hurriedly coughed lightly to remind her not to talk nonsense. This was after all outside the princess residence, and even if the princess residence had a secret passage, it was the princess residence's secret. How could it be spoken out so unscrupulously by them? Jingzhe stuck out her tongue and glanced at Shen Miao. Shen Miao's brows were tightly locked and her expression was somewhat grave. When Jingzhe saw it, she whispered, "Just now when one entered, her Princess Highness expression was not very good. Young lady, did you quarrel with her Princess Highness?" Shen Miao shook her head. Thinking of everything that happened in the princess residence today, she felt that her head was about to explode. He climbed into the carriage and said, "Let's go back first." If there was anything, she would continue to think about it when she returned to the Shen mansion. After all, everything that happened today was really out of her expectations. Just as the horse carriage was about to set off, Shen Miao could not help but lift the curtain to look back. The darkness of the night covered everything and there was no moonlight, so nothing could be seen. She sighed softly. In a corner not far from the princess mansion, the purple-robed youth silently watched the carriage leave. Gao Yang's folding fan was no longer swaying lightly. Instead, it was folded and tucked at his waist. He looked at the handsome young man in front of him with a rare complicated expression. He asked, "Is it worth it?" "There will always be such a day," Xie Jingxing said indifferently. "Don't you feel it's a pity?" Xie Jingxing's lips curled up slightly. The mask covered his face and expression, but one could still imagine the slight ridicule, some disdain and cold expression. He said, "It's just fate." Gao Yang did not speak and after a while, he shook his head and patted Xie Jingxing's shoulder. A few maids dressed as servants came out of the princess residence. They were holding a basket of something in their hands. They poured the contents of the basket onto the ground and threw the basket together with the basket on the ground. One of the maidservants said regretfully, "These things cost quite a lot of money. If we sell them in a medicine shop, we might be able to make some money. It's a pity to throw it away like this." "What do you know?" The maidservant at the side glared at her. "Who knows if this thing is poisonous or not? If it is, wouldn't it be troublesome to sell it?" "All right, stop looking. Let's go. The two maids turned around and returned to the princess residence. There was only a basket left on the ground. It was sent over by the medical hall earlier and, very coincidentally, received the medicine for Princess Rong Xian's heart disease. However, at this moment it was thrown away like a shoe and was even given the suspicion of being poisonous. Gao Yang's face was somewhat unbearable. One's heart would not be happy no matter how big one's heart was when one's efforts were wasted. He wanted to say a few words of comfort, but Xie Jingxing had already walked far away. He was dressed in brocade clothes and his figure was tall and straight as he leisurely walked in the night. His entire body was filled with an unstoppable elegance. It was just that that back view was somewhat lonely. Chapter 753. When Shen Miao returned to the Shen mansion, Shen Xian and wife were waiting for her in the residence. The sky was already dark but Shen Miao had not returned, thus everyone thought that something had happened. Seeing that she returned safe and sound, they were relieved. Shen Miao had something in her heart and said that she was somewhat tired and wanted to rest early. Everyone did not suspect anything. When Shen Miao returned to the bedroom, she let Jing Zhe and Guyu leave and sat down in front of the table. Her heart was somewhat uneasy. Xie Jingxing appearing in the princess residence today and exposing his identity in front of Princess Rong Xian was a somewhat rash decision. Moreover, Xie Jingxing was not a rash person. Other than helping Shen Miao out of the predicament, there was no other reason to do so that Princess Rong Xian would not do anything to the Shen family. It was not what Shen Miao was willing to see for the pleasant surprise situation to become difficult because of her. One had to know that even though Xie Jingxing said that he was powerful, he did not really hurt her from the beginning to the end. Shen Miao did not know how deep the relationship between Princess Rong Xian and Xie Jingxing was, but in the princess residence, Princess Rong Xian's reaction after confirming Xie Jingxing's identity was indeed chilling. Xie Jingxing did not say anything and looked indifferent as if he did not care about it at all, but Shen Miao knew how much damage one would get from one's close ones. Just like how Fu Xiuyi treated her in the past lifetime and how the second and third household of the Shen family treated her, it was because of how cold they were when they shed all pretense of cordiality and how much they ridiculed each other when they were warm and affectionate. If it was Xie Ding's disregard or harm, Xie Jingxing could not care, but Princess Rong Xian might not. After all, Xie Jingxing's first tiger head bracelet was given to Princess Rong Xian. After all, when he returned to the Ding capital 2 years later and knew that Princess Rong Xian had a heart illness again, he would immediately send people to search for the medicine. After all, there was some friendship in it. Shen Miao stood up with some irritation and walked to the window. She opened the window and looked out. The sky outside the window seemed to be splashed with ink and the Ding capital in the winter night revealed a bleak and desolate feeling. She thought for a while before turning around to return to the room and took out a thick crimson fur cloak from the box to cover her body. He tied the rope in front of his cloak tightly before walking to the window and calling out softly, "Song Yang." A black shadow fell down from the tree and stood straight in front of Shen Miao and said respectfully, "What instructions does young Furen have?" Shen Miao was now unable to hear Song Yang's address. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Bring me to see Xie Jingxing." Song Yang opened his mouth wide and sucked in a breath of cold air. He was born to be somewhat serious, and usually had a serious expression on his face. At this moment, his expression was somewhat comical. Shen Miao was somewhat angered by Song Yang's gaze and said, "Do you have any ideas or not?" "Young madam." Song Yang came back to his senses with a troubled expression on his face. This subordinate doesn't know where master is right now. Shen Miao frowned. Song Yang had been keeping an eye on her in the Shen mansion, so it was indeed impossible for him to know of Xie Jingxing's whereabouts. Tonight when she came out of the princess residence, Xie Jingxing had left too quickly and she did not have the time to ask. Right now, no one really knew where Xie Jingxing was. But one did not know why, she felt that Xie Jingxing should be in the residence of Prince Rui at this moment. His emotions were hard to distinguish and he was used to hiding his emotions under a mask. Thus Shen Miao felt that if Xie Jingxing was frustrated, he would be alone. She made a prompt decision and said to Song Yang, "Bring me to the residence of Prince Rui." Song Yang revealed a troubled expression and Shen Miao frowned and asked, "You can't even do this?" Song Yang quickly explained, "This subordinate can naturally do it alone. But bringing along young Furen would not be able to do it." Chapter 754. Shen Miao asked him, "Do you know Qinggong?" Song Yang hurriedly nodded his head. "Then it is all right." Shen Miao said, "Grab me and bring me to the residence of Prince Rui." Her thoughts were very simple, just like what Xie Jingxing did to her in the past. Song Yang was after all Xie Jingxing's people and to a certain extent was more convenient to use than Mo Qing and the rest. The most important thing was that she did not want Xie Jingxing's identity to be known by more people, as it would be more dangerous for one person to know about it, even if it was a person that one trusted, because there was no telling when one would be used by others. When her words were spoken, Song Yang shook his head repeatedly and there was even some fear in his eyes. "Cannot." "What is it now?" Shen Miao's patience was about to run out. Song Yang said, "Males and females are not clear." Shen Miao, she did not know where did Xie Jingxing found these guards that were more disciplined than females. But no matter what Shen Miao said, Song Yang was not willing to bring her to the residence of Prince Rui. Shen Miao was also in a difficult situation. If she did not allow Song Yang to use his Qinggong, she would have to walk out of the Shen residence's doors. The Shen residence's doors were guarded by Shen Xian's soldiers and it was impossible not to alarm them. To leave in the middle of the night, one feared that before she could even leave the doors, everyone in the family would wake up in twos and threes. At that time, she would not be able to explain at all. Shen Miao had a terrible headache. She looked at the wall outside the courtyard and suddenly a light bulb went off in her mind. When Xie Jingxing just moved to Yanqing Lane, because he was not short of money to spend, he simply bought all the neighboring residences between the residence of Prince Rui and the Shen Mansion, and even glorified it as neighbors. Looking at it this way, it could be said that the residence of Prince Rui was neighbors to the Shen Mansion. It was just that the room that Xie Jingxing stayed in was a little far away. Since it was a neighbor's residence, Shen Miao's gaze landed on the high wall in the courtyard. She said, "Climb over the wall." Song Yang looked at her blankly, as if he did not believe his own ears. He was ordered to protect Shen Miao's safety and had been watching Shen Miao's every move in the Shen Mansion, so naturally he knew what kind of person Shen Miao was. Shen Miao was dignified and calm, abided by the rules, and was able to endure loneliness at such a young age. She looked like a noble that came from a faraway land. In short, even some of her small actions showed that she had a good upbringing. Song Yang often sighed in his heart that this young madam was different from others. She was born to be extremely noble. Who knew that at this moment, he would hear that this noble young madam wanted to climb over the wall? Song Yang thought that there was something wrong with his ears. Shen Miao glared at him and said without anger, "Are you unable to hear my words?" "Yes, yes, yes." Song Yang stood up straight and did not dare to look at Shen Miao's expression. The following days were enough to make Song Yang feel pain. Previously, he thought that Shen Miao wanted to climb over the wall herself, but the wall that Shen Miao mentioned was to stack things on both sides of the wall to form a staircase. Shen Miao then walked from one side of the wall to the other side. In the middle of the night, Song Yang only went to steal the haystacks that the rich people left to fertilize, but the problem was that there were more than 10 courtyards between the residence of Prince Rui and the Shen Mansion. There were walls between each courtyard and Song Yang was so busy that he was sweating all over even on such a cold day. Seeing Shen Miao arrogantly walking past one wall after another, as if she was not walking on the wall but the high steps of the imperial palace, he sighed and at the same time complained incessantly about his fate. If it was not that he was afraid of tarnishing young madam's body and provoking master's dissatisfaction, Song Yang would not need to put in so much effort. One had to know that his qigong was not bad and it was more than enough to fly with a person, so why would he need to run around now? Previously when Master transferred him out from Mou's army, his colleagues were all envious of his good luck, but did not know that this good job was to be a coolie for others and was even worse than a manservant. Song Yang silently cried in his heart, "You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.